So, good evening and welcome to you could almost call it the unofficial end to Season 13 and the Monday night touring package. Tonight is the review, where we'll be having Jack Millington, who's already here.
Hello everyone.
Obviously host of the Group A1 Championship, and in the very near future, in the evening, Lee Horn, who hosts the Modern Touring Cars and the Clios on Mondays as well. We're going to be reviewing through the season, seeing high points, low points, getting a few reviews and some opinions as well, because it's been a very mixed bag for Season 13. I think even Jack will agree with that one throughout the season. But, sorry Jack, were you going to say something?
No, it's fine, go on.
We're going to start off with the Group A1s, because obviously Jack is here, and that is the first league of the night. So Group A1s, the vintage touring cars, as you could call them, one of the in my opinion, the golden era of the touring cars. 3 cars this season: the Mercedes, the Ford, the BMW, all very equally paced, equally performanced, and generally very good racing overall. But to give you a proper introduction to them, I'll let Jack explain.
Yeah, so this season we made the conscious decision to change and outlaw the Audi V8, which had 4-wheel drive, and the Nissan Skyline R32 GTR, which also had 4-wheel drive, because there was a huge discrepancy in pace between the 4-wheel drive cars and the rear-wheel drive cars. Now, with such a big change, we had to adapt and change the structure and the layout of the championship. We had to have multiple rounds where everyone drove the same car, and then we had 3 races in the new car, the new addition to the league, which is the BMW M1 Pro car, fantastic Group 4 car that isn't necessarily used that much in Next Gen, which is a shame, because it's a fantastic car to drive, and I thought it'd make a nice change. It'd be a little bit of different dynamic, and it'd spice the championship race up. Now, I believe it has, but I'm sure we'll come on to that later on when Jordan goes further on with his analysis. And then we had all the other races where 6 of those rather, everyone was in either the Mercedes, or they were in the Ford, or the whole grid was in the M3. And then we had another 3 races where everyone had one car that they could pick. Some chose the Ford, such as myself. Some others chose the Mercedes, such as Whitford Zero. Others chose the BMW, like Lionel Grigsby. And that is the premise of the Group A1s for this season.
So that was the overall. Now, it's been quite tight this season with the Group A1s. Quite possibly one of the tighter leagues, and one of the only ones. I think there's not many that actually went down to the wire of the final round this season for Next Gen, and this was one of them. I mean, in that respect, that's quite an achievement nowadays.
It's a massive achievement when you consider the quality of drivers. In the fastest drivers in Next Gen are at a step above, which is, I know some people would say, oh, that's, other people are exceptionally talented, and to be fair, they are, but consistently across the board, these top drivers are always a round or 2 ahead. The Group A1s have so many different dynamic variables in different cars, different racetracks, different weather conditions that don't get announced until the day off, so it limits practice. So no one's ever quite sure until 1 o'clock on the day of the race what's going to happen. And the changes this season have brought in a new race winner, brought in more race winners this season, multiple race winners, and we've had a few more standouts. We've had brilliant performances from drivers who are normally closer to the back, pulling the midfield closer, and we've had debutants who've had equally very solid seasons, and it's been a challenge for everyone to perform week in, week out, and that's what makes this championship, for me, so competitive.
And in a way, it actually closes the racing up on the track, actually, sometimes, especially in the one-make races, when it's literally down to your skill. Also not making any mistakes. I mean, we've seen countless times drivers in the one meg races getting off into the lead, and then one mistake, they're back in the mid pack again, and they're having to fight just to get a good result again.
We've seen it a number of times this season where in the BMW race at Rouen-les-Sarthe, Jamie spun and he had to fight to get back into the top 5. We've seen in other races this season, such as Donington Park, Scooby having to constantly battle his way through the pack after starting lower down. And I think that just adds a different dynamic. Like you said, Jordan, everyone in the league has this ability to defend. There are very few drivers who don't have it. In fact, I'd say there's no one in this league now that doesn't have the ability to defend. I think the way that some of the regular drivers who've been now racing in this league for 3-4 seasons have got this knack of being able to defend against the quicker cars behind them, and it's becoming a pain in the backside for the faster drivers to overtake. And it's that sort of little bit of highlights. They might not spend long ahead of the cars that are quicker than them, but it's that highlight. It just shows you that one mistake and that could be race over.
Now, speaking of races, 12 of them, 3 of them in the M1 Pro car. I'm trying to remember this because I believe the events page has disappeared, so I can't go back and double check my calendar.
I know off the top of my head, the actual events page for the Group A ones is still there.
I can't find it.
It's not the end of the world. But yeah, we had 2 races in the Mercedes, all the same car, 2 races in the BMW, 3 as you said in the M1, and I believe 3 in the Ford.
Yes.
No, 2 in the Ford rather.
That makes sense, yeah, because there's because there was a third of it being cars of their own choice, two quarters of single make, and another quarter of the new car.
Mm-hmm.
So moving into it, obviously we started at Brands Hatch Indy, as we normally do, and that was open choice. And it's fair to say it's Scooby's home.
It's Scooby's home track, but he was made to work for it at the time, and it was a free-car battle between himself, Adam Morris, who was just sitting on the back of him at the time, and obviously the driver who's no longer with NXTGEN, WRT Edu at the time, and Whitford even briefly led earlier on in the race, and that was a great scrap. Scooby and the Ford had to work for it. He only got the lead 2 laps before the end. He led briefly, but then the Mercedes caught back up to him because Mercedes looks after its tyres better. But Scooby, like you said, does that knack at his home circuit. You just pump a result out when it's needed.
Yeah, I mean, at the time, obviously, Edu was right on the tail of them. And I believe he led a number of laps before Scooby could actually get past him.
He did. Whitford led the first 6 or 7, I believe. Then Scooby breezed past him on the straight. And then I believe Scooby made a mistake that was sort of unseen on the broadcast. No fault of your own, Jordan. And Scooby dropped back a little bit, which allowed Edu to pressure him, and Edu got past. And Edu was leading for a number of laps until, inevitably, Scooby found his rhythm again.
Moving on, we went to Donington Park GP. Now, interesting, it's one of the questions I quite like to ask about this. Why the GP loop? Why not the National? Because, in theory, in retrospect, the National is actually better for racing.
The reason why that the GP loop was added was because the Mercedes is quite sketchy through the chicane, and it's the only real corner on the track where the Mercedes is quite difficult to drive. Maybe the final corner as well, because it's off camber, but that's difficult for a lot of cars. But the GP track over the seasons has always thrown up a little bit of drama, a little bit of something has always happened, and it lends quite well to drivers who potentially haven't quite got the pace, but have the ability to defend. Slidergas was defending second for a long time, which allowed Edu to escape at the time off the road, and it was too late for anyone else to catch him.
Now, yeah, it's fair to say, really, Donington is the race that none of even though Edo won, he should not have won. It's always been
No.
called that race because Whitford, obviously, I believe this was the race, he pressed the wrong button.
He was trying to mute Caesar 82, and he scrolled, I think, one too low beyond that and hit return to lobby. And that was that. The only consolation prize he had was the pole position point.
Yes.
Which is a great shame because I think he would have won that race.
I believe
95%.
I believe he was about 3/10 quicker than anybody, if my memory serves me correct.
It was a margin like that, I think.
It wasn't a small gap. It was considering the tightness of the pack this season, it was quite a big gap to have, and having that sort of advantage on pole position around Donington is an absolute dream.
Definitely,
Because
and Donington's quite a difficult track at times to overtake on. If you get frustrated, you can go off the circuit. So I think Whitford probably would have won that race.
So after Donington, we have the first race in the brand new vintage from the used car section, BMW M1 Pro cars. Now, I know this is one of your favourite cars in the game, if not your favourite.
I think it's my favourite car in the game.
How?
I think there are a few others, but yes.
Obviously for you, it kind of didn't quite pan out in qualifying, only getting 6th, but obviously a podium in the end. It was obviously quite pleasing for you in your favourite car.
Well, my qualifying should have been a lot better. However, with other drivers and everyone catching slipstream off one another, I was sort of badly positioned on circuit, which is why I was that far down. I was really proud of my time, actually, considering I didn't have a slipstream to get to 6th. But obviously the race panned out to be a lot more chaotic on lap 1, particularly.
And I tell you, we say Spa, it wasn't really Spa. More like historic Spa, and it turned out to be the Belgians have a very good space program.
Yeah, I mean, that was a memorable moment of the season, was Tim going to space in his M1. I think that was absolutely fantastic. It was just perfectly timed. Well, I think not just that as well, but Jordan, you caught some of it, but not all of it. There was a huge shunt on lap 1. You caught the last half of it, but it all started about 3 or 4 corners before that. And One High Mofo, Scooby, and Whitford all sort of came together while they were in 3rd place. And obviously there was no room, so Scooby went onto the grass and barrel rolled end over end. Whitford went with him, and so did. Luckily, Whitford got away with it, went on the grass, but One High Mofo got stuck, and then obviously I managed to nip through all that and disappeared off up the road. And then the further round the corner on the dip down was when One Eye Mofo crashed and then caused 3 or 4 different drivers to go barrel rolling in the air. It was insane.
Yeah, it was pretty insane. I'm pretty certain. Where is he on the sheet? Yeah, I believe he retired, didn't he, from that? Because
He got stuck on his roof. Yeah.
Yeah. And I remember seeing the end of that. I'm just like, this is gonna, even though it's round 3, this is gonna make the championship interesting. Because even though 3 out of 12, you're only a quarter of the way through, every mistake will haunt you to the last race. And it kind of proved, as the season went on, we'll see as we get there, that every mistake that people made in the first 2 rounds kind of proved vital in where they ended up in the overall standings. And the funny thing is, go back to Tim and his space program. He didn't have a lot of mistakes. Obviously, I think this was really his first major mistake. And I remember commentating on it because I was practically speechless in commentary when that happened. Especially when he came back down on his wheels, correct direction, and just drove off like nothing ever happened.
It was bizarre. It was definitely bizarre.
I mean, yeah, I think that's the only time I've ever been speechless during a commentary screen. Which is impressive, so I think an award has to go to Tim at some point for that. But
yes, I think there's a game called Kerbal Space Program that will be on his way to Tim's address.
But even like Tim's positions, even though he doesn't make a lot of mistakes, the mistakes he does make do actually even affect his championship at the back end, fighting with the lower end drivers. And in reality, what kind of do you think when you're in those first 3 rounds, you suddenly make a massive mistake and you're right at the back and can't recover properly? Because I believe, if I'm reading this spreadsheet right, Scooby G had a bad 1 round Spa.
He did, because he got really delayed by that crash at the start. He barrel rolled, but after learning from a few seasons back, he had a reset button to track this time, and he was on his roof. So I think you caught him when he just literally after he'd reset. He was in 10th and then got caught up in the second crash. And he was that far behind the top, I think it was the top 8 at that point, that there was nothing he could do around such a long track that's the classic Spa is, the 1970 version.
What do you actually... And it's because obviously when I drive, I never really expect a lot because I'm not quick enough to fight for a title. But when you are quick enough to fight for a title, what goes through your mind when that happens so early on in the season, knowing that could be the turning point so early on?
It's... When you make a mistake earlier on, I have to refer back to previous seasons, and I refer back to the disconnection I had 2 seasons back at Snetterton quite early on. And you think of it more as an opportunity lost. It's not so much as if it's in the final third of the season where if you do disconnect in the final 3 races or you have a big crash, you start to panic. It's more, you think, okay, right, damage limitation, we've got to get on with it, and you just push as hard as you can until you see a gap ahead of you that's probably too much, so you think, right, well, I'm going to settle into a rhythm, and if anyone makes a mistake, I'll be there to make a chance of it. But that's how you've got to get into that mindset. Some people get angry and frustrated and throw it off the road and make it worse, but you can't. No matter what's happened, even if it's, you've been very clearly taken off the circuit, you have to reset. It's very, very difficult to do, especially earlier on in the season, because you think, well, there's a chance gone, I'm catching up now all the way to the rest of the campaign.
Yeah, I've got to say, evening, Lee, how are you, mate?
Evening, gentlemen. Yeah, very good, thank you.
If you haven't guessed, we did start a bit late, so we're still in Group 8.
No problem.
Now, the other thing I noticed at Spa when I was commentating was the teamwork. Now, there's nothing in the rulebook that say you can't team up with someone, and it was pretty much the obvious pairing, which teamed up at the front of the Spa-Francorchamps race.
Between Jamie and Adam.
Yeah.
And to be fair, I think a lot of people who were racing that day at Spa would have thought the same thing, but no one had probably pre-prepared it like those two had. Because Adam, I believe, was 2 seconds on pole at that point, and that was because of the slipstream that he'd got from Jamie. Jamie would have been quicker, but I believe he made a mistake on his fastest lap.
He did, yes.
And they worked together perfectly, and when that big crash happened, I managed to nip through and I was 2 seconds behind about 4 corners after it, and by the time we got to the end of lap 1, I think there were 3 or 4 seconds up the road. It took 2 seconds because they knew they needed to pull away. And I know they made a mistake later on in the race which pulled me back, but I was never going to catch them.
But it does show that if you can... I mean, I know it's easy for those two because I know they go into parties, etc., etc., because also I've raced with them countless times in other leagues. But it almost proves if you can almost make an ally in a championship, and work out a way of signalling when to just get each other away, it can help you massively during the race and eventually the championship.
It can do. It's small things make big consequences, and obviously what they decided to do was the right move at the time, and I think a number of drivers were quite envious of that because that really helped those two. And although there's no teammates or anything, when you're in the heat of battle, when you're trying to catch someone in front, there is a temporary truce and you all try and battle, but theirs was really well organised and pre-prepared, and obviously they ended up having quite a really nice slipstream and battle up front, even though it wasn't full guns blazing. It was quite nice to see until the final lap.
So moving on from Spa and into a legendary race which had been moved up the order of the calendar, Bathurst and the Sierras. And I remember Bathurst immensely well from season 12, and you'll remember this. When you had the best chance of winning Bathurst, you spun it. Jamie had the best chance of winning Bathurst, he lost it, and I believe it was Slider Gas in the end took the victory by staying out of the war. And the funny thing in that season, that should have been Slider Gas's second win, but that's for another day. You put it on par. You'd done the first bit right, but you couldn't quite keep Scooby G behind you.
No, it was really frustrating, and I think at that point it was just before the Christmas. It was just after we'd come back from the Christmas break, and I felt a touch rusty in qualifying. I know I was put it on pole, but that was mainly because of the massive lake that had formed at the final corner, and I knew the best line to get through it without spinning round and losing too much time, which is why I was on pole by, I think it was like 2 seconds, I believe, from Adam. And I got a good start, and I couldn't quite get into a rhythm until I made a mistake whilst in the lead, and Scooby nipped past. Obviously Scooby being Scooby drove off into the distance in the midnight sky, and the rain came thundering down. But he deserved that victory. I couldn't quite keep up with him. He had the pace that day. Maybe if it had been before Christmas and I was still in the rhythm, it might have been different, but it's a different universe. They have the answer for that one.
We're going to skip Silverstone National, and we'll come back to it because obviously it's quite a special race, so we'll skip that one for the minute. We'll go to Oschersleben, round number 6, notoriously difficult circuit, and that kind of proved with some of the... I think it was probably the race with the most contact in it, to be fair.
Yeah, we had a huge number of... I think because of how tight Oschersleben is, and it's been known as a go-kart track over the years, especially with that very difficult turn 1-2 complex, let's say, it's quite difficult for a number of drivers to try and get into the groove, and if you haven't been practicing, Oschersleben really can catch you out. And there was that very strange crash with the 3 drivers at back. I believe it was Lionel Griesby, Royston, and I can't remember who the 3rd driver was. It might, off the top of my head, it might have been the Les, I think, who was the 3rd driver. Because if I remember rightly, Lionel Griesby showed me the POV afterwards, and you caught the end of it, and the 2 of the Les and the Royston went up side by side through the corner, and they were quite slow, so Lionel Griesby went round the outs, tried to go through the middle, but obviously the doors closed and all 3 of them went off. Now, it was a blame of all 3 because they all sort of moved the ways that they shouldn't have done, because they all sort of lost it mid-corner and they all crashed and went off into the barrier. And the reverse grid as well, well, the first proper reverse top four of the season, really spiced things up.
Yeah, I mean, although, in all fairness, that top four, all three drivers, because Whitford couldn't make that one. You all got up the grid pretty well. I mean, looking through the stats here, you've got yourself started 11th, finished 4th. Scooby 13th start, 5th place finish, and Jamie done incredibly well to get on the podium from 12th. But obviously with Adam Morris winning that one, being able to qualify, I mean, he did kind of show what pace he had when no one bugged him.
Yeah, I think there was a bit of a return to form, and Lee being here will be able to help a little bit out with this, because I don't believe Adam and Jamie had gone through a Christmas break until this point, and Lee will be able to back me up on this. When drivers have a Christmas break halfway through a season or partway through a season, they come back slightly different. Some people get worse, some people get better, and Adam was one of those this season that got better. I don't know if you've noticed that, Lee, in the past championships that we've taken part in NXTGEN, that drivers can change.
Yeah, it's weird. They do. I can't explain it, and I don't quite understand why, because in theory, you'd think logic having a break, you'd maybe practice more, or then again it could be the opposite round, and maybe you're busy and you don't. But it is a strange thing what happens at the break, and you don't know who is and isn't going to come back better or worse. So it's interesting.
And the bizarre thing is, to add to what Lee's just said, is you could practice and practice and practice and come off worse. You could have no practice at all and actually come back a better driver. It's a
real mixed bag.
Very, yeah, it's a very unique situation that only comes round, obviously, once a year. Maybe once every 3 or 4 seasons, I think, if I work it out right around.
So after Oschersleben, we go to Hockenheim. And Whitford returned after missing Oschersleben to the to the top step of the podium. It was his second win of the season.
It was.
And it was very well driven, I found, because Hockenheim, when I was watching it, was very compact. There wasn't a lot of space between the drivers. I think you had the front group, I think, of about 4 cars, and then pretty much most of the rest of the pack in a group, until they gradually split near the end of the race.
Yeah, the weather definitely played a part, because it started off very light rain and then built into heavier rain as the race got on. And I think it just, like you said, it compacted everyone. Now, Whitfield led. I think one High Mofo, who was another driver to benefit from the Christmas break, actually briefly led on lap 1 before getting taken. And then I think Jamie led for a portion of the race, then he made a mistake. Whitfield led, then made a mistake, then Jamie. And it was a lot of battling going on up front. But all the while that was going on, Scooby G, despite not having the pace that race, and if you look at the fastest lap, I think it was 2 seconds slower than the quickest lap of the race, maybe even 3, just sat comfortably at his own pace and ended up getting a second place out of it, which, if everyone else had kept it on the road, probably would have been 5th, maybe even 6th.
Yeah, and I remember this one because you were catching up with Scooby, because Adam was up there as well. And I remember because you and Adam had a slight bit of contact
on the final lap.
On the final lap, as you were approaching, I think either as you were approaching Scooby or as you were just ahead of him. And I remember because Adam actually ended up waiting to make sure he didn't gain anything, because it was a bit of a weird one. In essence,
yes,
that incident.
Because it was quite strange, because Scooby didn't make any mistakes in the race, and at that point, I think I was in front of him for a bit and then made another little error somewhere, and then Scooby got past, and then Adam spun, even though he was quicker. And we were battling for third. Scooby was already second come the final lap, and we were battling. And obviously the way the track moved closer to the left-hand side than it should have done on the right, left no room for parallels, and Jamie was the one who took advantage and nicked the last podium. Although he nearly hit Adam as he was slowing down.
Yes, he did. Yeah, that was a weird one. When I was watching that, I saw that and I thought, oh, here we go, this could be massive. Luckily not for Jamie, because that would have been a lot of hard work undone.
He was clearly the fastest that day as well.
Yeah, it was a weird one because I think he was quickest, but I think Whitford was still right on his tail. Those two were very, very tight all race long until their mistakes came along. After Hockenheim, Zolder, quite...
that will live long in the memory.
Yeah, it's top full reverse grid, and I don't know what it is about Zolder, but there always seems to be an incident on the start line.
Yeah, I felt really sorry for Johnny as well, because that was his best qualifying of the season in fifth. It's web user Johnny, for those that don't know, and just it was a lag-based start, and I've seen the POVs when we were analysing them after the race, and he just got punted by a ghost. There's no other way of saying it, and it was a shame because he's proven in other leagues, Johnny, that he's very, very good defensively. I'd like to have seen how he'd have got on.
Yeah, and unfortunately he lives in the race for him after being ghost punted. But yet again, another reverse grid, and Adam took advantage yet again of that reverse grid.
Adam, up until the last two races of the season, last three races in, kept himself just close enough to be in with a shout at the championship fight, but not directly involved that he'd be affected by the reverse grid, and that kept helping him. So I had a good start that day and got up to second by the end of lap 1, and he was already 4 seconds up the road. That was it, and I wasn't going to catch him after that point because the Mercedes handled beautifully in the wet weather compared to the very, very cumbersome Ford, and it was a difficult race, especially with the heavier rain coming down, and then we had standing water starting to appear in the last 4 laps, which caused absolute chaos. And there was a moment in the final lap when there was, I think it was 4 cars within a second in that first sector. I was third, and Les was fourth. I think Whitford had just spun off the corner before. Jamie was also there. One-Eye Mofo was there. Everyone was all just scrambling for grip. It was fantastic. It was a very big challenge, and if it had been a normal race, it probably would have been cancelled. But I think with Project Cars 2, you can have a scenario like that once every now and then, and it throws up a surprise result.
It does, and I remember watching that because it one of the funniest moments, and it'll always stick in my head, this one. I believe it was you, One High Mofo, Jamie, Les, I think it was, or maybe Whitford.
Les.
All of you coming out of the first chicane, otherwise as the Klein chicane, and I'm pretty certain all 4 of you went off on it, coming out of the corner.
There was a big lake there, at the edge, at the end of it, and the Ford became a boat, and you couldn't turn, and when it got gripped back, it'd spin. The Ford saved me that day to get that podium, because there's still a part of me now. Les should have got a podium. He was so unlucky not to get a podium that day. He was very, very good in that BMW. He really made the difference in that car. As did One High Mofo as well.
I remember because you and I think it was the Les came over the brow, side by side, nearly touching door handles. And then behind you had One High Mofo and Jamie, and they really did touch door handles. They came over the crest, both of them absolutely on the limit sideways. And that's something that will always stick in my mind, because it was like, that is insanely crazy, the fact that all 4 drivers went off on the same corner, the same lap. and they're still having issues 50 metres up the road.
But again, the quiet assassin had moved into second place despite not being the quickest driver again, and Scooby just slipped through, and while we were all scrambling about, drove excellently in the Ford and finished another solid second.
So we then move on from Zolder into Whitford's backyard. Ruin Leia now. Me and you were talking about this on the week leading up, and I was saying, well, can Whitford make it 3 in a row? 3 times at Ruin, 3 times a winner. And we kind of reached the conclusion that we thought it'd be quite hard to do, because everyone was closing the gap, and it's such a difficult circuit that you had one mistake and you're done for really around Ruin. It's very hard to get it back. And what the other thing that was gonna play into other people's hands was it was not a reverse grid race, meaning all the faster boys would be at the top battling stupidly hard, which in turn can make mistakes. But yet again, Whitford somehow out of thin air qualified second, and he made a mistake and he went on to win the race, becoming, I think, you'll probably correct me now, but I think he's the first person to win the same race 3 seasons in a row.
Off the top of my head, I think that might be the case.
The only man to defend his victory 3 times.
I think the thing with Whitford in that race was he's very quick at the start. He made a mistake on lap 1. He went off the road and he accidentally hit his pit limiter button, and I got frustratingly and still winds me up to this day, got stuck behind him because I couldn't move past because there was cars going past and they took him out. So he made another mistake and I nipped past him further down the race, but he recomposed, repositioned himself, and that was again the race where One High Mofo had again shown his pace but couldn't quite convert that into leading the race because he was shadowing Scooby and Jamie at the start, and obviously Jamie made a mistake and spun off, which slowed Scooby. One Eye Mofo closed the gap, then I closed the gap, managed to get past, but Whitford was also closing the gap to us because he had the faint toe too, so obviously One Eye Mofo spun off again further around the track, but Whitford at that point was a 3-car battle for a win, and frustratingly I looked in my rear view mirror just at the wrong time and I missed my braking point, escaped off the road and had to fight back, and then Scooby incredibly made a mistake, which was a shock at the time because he's not really known for that. And then, unseen by yourself on the final lap, I went for a dive at the hairpin, but tapped Whitford, and that was that. That was realistically, that was it. He deserved it.
From Ruin, we headed to the last round of the M1 Pro Cars Road America, and finally, it's fair to say, finally, One High Mofo got his just deserved result, taking that car to win.
He did, and he's shown last season, I think there was 2 or 3 races last season where there was just flickers of pace. It was Bannock Bray, I think he finished 4th, Rouen he qualified within a 10th of Whitford in the Mercedes last season, season 12. There was another race as well off the top of my head, I can't remember. And then, when I mentioned earlier, because Lee's just disappeared from the party for a few months, I'm sure he'll be back. When One High Mofo came back off the break, he'd missed the Bath first race, came back and he'd reset and he'd led at the race that we're going to talk about in a bit, but we'll come back to it. And he qualified second at Hockenheim, and everyone sort of thought, oh, hang on, One High Mofo's at the front, how's he going to, bit of a wild card, took the lead and then made a mistake. At Zolder, he qualified second. He ran okay in the first half, but when the wet weather came back, him and the Les drove brilliantly in that M3. They were fantastic, and brought the M3 back, and he got the top 5 again. Like we just mentioned at Rouen, he was there. He just couldn't quite convert it, and then finally everything fell in place for him this season to get that debut win, and I was made up for him, absolutely made up for him. I was on my own at the point that during the latter stages of the race, and I could see the gap coming down because Whitford was closing in on him, and I thought to myself, one, Tom as he's known away from racing, I thought, come on Tom, just bring it home. You've got a big gap. Just measure it, and then he crossed the line. I was really made up for it. I think everyone was, because it was really well driven.
And I think the nice thing about that win was it wasn't by luck either. Even though Whitford was closing in, Monaimo at the start of the race was genuinely the fastest man on the circuit. He wasn't getting lucky with anyone, having mistakes. That was genuinely his pace, and it was really nice to see that the work he's put in all season, and finally the pace shows, and it's true, because obviously I know people say, oh, if people win, it's really, really good, but sometimes, and I've known it before, some people who win is sometimes not necessarily down to them showing true pace. It's more a case of they've managed to make up for other people's mistakes, but Wanhai Mofo's was genuine pace. And I think even if Whitford had caught him, I don't think he'd be able to get past.
I think with the way that Wanhai Mofo was driving, because he got fastest lap that race as well, which is also a new one for him, he'd built the gap up. And when you're in that position to try and get your first race win in a season, I think it would have been Wanhai Mofo's first win in NXTGEN. That might not be right actually, but in the modern touring car, and the Monday Night Tours rather, that would be the case. And he'd never been in that position before, and being in the lead, having a gap like that for the first time, when you know things haven't gone well for you during the season, you know you've missed out, you know you've had mistakes, you start to get, as the laps start to count down, you get a bit twitchier and a bit twitchier. Some people crack and make a mistake and they've got to fight for it, and then they make another one and it's gone. Tom measured his pace really, really well. Whitford caught him, and I still think Tom slowed just so he didn't crash, and also a little bit of nerves as well. And yeah, it's fantastic for him. It was really well deserved.
So, moving on, penultimate round, Alton Park Foss. Boy, do I love this circuit. Probably my favourite on the calendar. I'm not gonna lie, it always produces fantastic racing, and man, were there mistakes. There was a load of mistakes in that race.
There was the lag start, which put Fraser in the wall, but he kept going. Then he spun from contact from lag, and that was just on top lap 1. How everyone missed him is a miracle. I don't really know. Then I was in the lead for a couple of laps, made a mistake. Scooby got past. Then Scooby made a mistake,
and I caught that.
And you caught that one, and that was a shot. And then it looked like a 2-horse race between myself and Jamie. And then the really very bizarre incident with Royston, who was the back marker, sent Jamie off. It was strange. I don't think there was anything wrong with that. Admittedly, I don't know if you'd spotted before that happened, Jordan, but I nearly hit the back of Royston going into turn 1. Very close. I only just missed him, but it just caught me by surprise because I thought he was going to brake later than that, but he braked earlier to get out my way, and I had to shuffle up the side, and I was swearing as I came around the corner because I knew it wasn't his fault, but it was could have been my own mistake. And then more mistakes for everyone else. It was crazy. And then Jamie lost the podium on the last corner, the last lap.
Yes. I mean, I tell you, Whitford could have had. I think Whitford could have had second in that race as well.
Certainly.
He was catching you guys up like an absolute rocket at times. But after, correct me if I'm wrong, 21 races winless in the Group A1s, you finally took another victory.
Yeah, it's like 21 races to get a second win on the wheel. And the first time it happened was also at Alton Park. So that was quite nice, actually. At that point, I knew the race before at Road America hadn't gone well because I had a big crash at the start, avoiding cars at the front, and then ended up crashing myself to avoid everyone else. But I was hunting for the win more than anything else. The championship was a secondary thing at that point. I put everything I had into that race and made sure I had a good start because I had a little practice start beforehand. I sacrificed a lap for it, and I nailed it. And I said, even when Scooby got in front, I thought, I'm not losing this race. This is something that I need to go into season 14 bouncing and ready for it. And even then, I won without actually winning. I don't do things properly because I got got a ridiculous penalty for Scooby spinning off, and I didn't see the checkered flag, but I was far enough ahead to be classified as the victor because I got disqualified as I entered 25 out of 25.
So, following on from your win, we headed to Nordschleife. It was the decider. You had a chance of winning, and it was slim, but it was still a very nice little opportunity heading into Nordschleife. And the unthinkable happened. For the first time in the season, your internet decided not to work, and it kind of took away that battle.
Yeah. Yeah, it did take it away from me. Boy! I've figured out why I'd been disconnected so much over the seasons, and it's more to do with Project Cars 2 server side, but there is something that I can do that will at least stop it for a little bit. And I'd forgotten to do it the morning, the couple of minutes beforehand. I usually reset the activity on the router through my laptop, and obviously with Nordschleife being so big, I was lapping in time trial at that point and forgot to reset. And I think
Oh, and there he goes.
Yeah, that happened to me just now. Network error threw me out, so I had to come back in.
how ironic is that?
That's quite funny, really, isn't it?
That is literally ironic, isn't it? How amazing is that? I've always had an issue with PSN parties, by the way. It's not just the Project Cars thing. But, as I was saying, if I'd have reset the activity, it would have been okay for the race. And I didn't. And it's frustrating because I had the pace to win. I wouldn't have won the championship because that was Scooby's, I know that for certain. But I had the pace in the car and I felt comfortable and I knew I was quicker than everyone in front of me on that first lap. And it's a case of it would have been a three-way scrap for the race victory. I think, could I have won it? I think I could have. I wouldn't have won the championship though. That's definitely true.
Now, obviously, Scooby won the title in style, you could say, coming from the very back of the grid in 12th at the time to win it. I mean, that is one way to win a title. It's fair to say. But I know a lot of people would probably talk about the title at this point because it's the final race. It's what it's all about. But because you disconnected, I kind of draw away from that and look more to the other competitors because it's such a hard circuit, and I'd like to almost draw the attention to Tim on this one.
100%.
Because I know the title race is important, but it got ruined. And Tim, and I remember because me and you were talking about it in the stream because you ended up commentating with me. What an achievement for Tim. I mean, a circuit who he's notoriously been lapped on every occasion, and he shows the improvement he's had in season 13 unbelievably well.
I think if you, I said in my review for Tim, if you want to see the improvement and how you can improve as a driver in next gen, you look at Tim, and there's another driver as well who races in the Ginetta Tours, a Shadowstalker DDS. But in terms of the Group A1s, look to Tim, because it's a 9-minute lap. If you're a quick driver, it's a 9-minute 5 roughly lap, maybe even a 9-minute 10 for the if you have a quicker drivers. And Tim used to get lapped on a 9-minute lap in the last 2 seasons. Now the first 2 occasions it had happened is because he actually did get lapped about halfway round and then just stopped. Last season he was quite close, and he could have actually finished, but decided he couldn't bother doing a lap and waiting and having everyone else to wait and watch what he was doing. But this season was superb. He finished 3 minutes behind, which a lot of people will say, well, that's a big gap. You've lost 45 seconds a lap to the leader. But considering he got lapped in a 9-minute track, 9-minute long track in the last 3 seasons before this one, I mean, that's a 200% improvement from last season alone.
But it's the fact that, obviously you said 45 seconds a lap, but that's across a 9-minute lap, you know.
A 9-minute lap. Yeah, of course. And I think that's a very commendable achievement.
Well, especially considering the circuit it is. I mean, because as soon as you hit the Nordschleife, all hell breaks loose. You make one mistake, one, especially in the Sierras, one wheel on the grass, and you lose up to 20 seconds at times, depending on how big a spin is.
Depending on where you are on the track. If you go through the flood flats and you crash, you are going to lose 20 seconds. You know, and I think Tim has been the biggest improver of this season. I think there was maybe 2 races this season he got lapped, as opposed to half the calendar last season. And he's almost, I think it's going to take another season, maybe even 2 seasons before he can latch onto midfield battles. I said in this review that he's got, when he's in a fun lobby, when he's away from the pressure cooker of races and leagues, he's quick. He's quicker than he is. I don't know what he needs to switch on in his mind. I don't know if Lee has any suggestions or maybe ideas of what it might be. But Tim needs to, if he can find a link between the two, he could join the midfield battle.
I think it's a self-confidence thing around the quicker guys, and when he's in a fun lobby and he's having a bit of a social, that it doesn't weigh on his mind about the concerns of one having to drive sensibly, clean and fast all at the same time, and he does it naturally when he doesn't have to think about it. And if he could try and adopt that in his mindset a bit more, I think it'd help him be a bit quicker in the actual racing.
Yeah, I mean, having that pressure, and the other thing with the league race is, even though you don't really get anything for it, you always want to get those points, and I think having the pressure, sometimes just having that bit of pressure of, need to try and score, need to finish in a decent position, can actually make you slower than you are, because you're actually trying not to have an accident. And I know a lot of the time, I mean, especially in my case when I drive, if I go a bit slower, I actually lose concentration. You actually have to make more mistakes. So that could potentially be part of it as well, is that he's actually not going as quick as he could do, and that could then, in theory, be reducing his concentration and reducing effectively his, not ability to drive, but just where he is on the circuit and just making those small errors.
Yeah, well, I can agree with that. I think there's two reasons from the pair you served up right there that could be the case.
But that was end of season Nordschleife. Obviously, season 14 on the horizon. That's for another night. Now I'm going to let you take more of the lead on the next topic, Jack, because this season had a very special race in it for this Group A ones, and there was a lot of hype around it. The 100th race.
This was a very emotional moment for me, to be honest, because I'm quite an emotional person, to be honest. And the 100th race of all incarnations of the Group A ones, that goes back to the Group A Tours for a number of seasons, the ETMS BMW M3 Championship back in season 5, season 4, and obviously the original Ford Sierra Cup back in season 3. So this 100th race was kind of a massive deal because I've mentioned this before, I'll mention it again. To go from having 4 drivers in one race and an average of 6 to 7 drivers per meet was difficult, and there were days when I was ecstatic with 9 drivers when we first started off with the Group A Tours as it was at the time. And the league has evolved a lot over the and I've evolved as a host a lot, I find, as well, because now I know what works and what hasn't worked. And going into that race, I wanted to make it special, so I thought, well, we might as well have a full reverse grid. It was something that was partially introduced in season 12 with the top 4 reverse. I thought, why not do a full grid? And as always with the Group A Tours, as over this incarnations, there was an error. There always is when it comes. There's always some daft cock up somewhere, and we had to redo the qualifying again. But everyone got their act together and qualified, and I was really pleased. And the race turned out to be fantastic. I couldn't be happier. It was a heartbreak for Cameron, who's Envoy Extreme, who actually was due to start on pole and disconnected just in between, just as the race was about to start, which put one high mofo on pole position, and that will go down in history as his first pole, because technically it is. You know, he's earned that because of his championship position at the time was second bottom, but with Cameron disconnecting, that changed everything round, and that was the turning point for his season. He drove brilliantly. He led 8 laps of that race, but there were quicker drivers behind him who all wanted to catch up, and we had a few fillers who very kindly, such as Lee, Tilbs, Elliott, who came back, and Sully, who's been in and out of the championship over the season as well, who came back and made it a big celebration. We had Phil in the commentary booth with you, Jordan, as well.
Yeah.
It was an amazing day for me that day, actually, to be honest. Everything that a lot of people have done a lot of work for me, and I remembered everyone who's taken part over the seasons who I thanked on the day, because it was special, and the race was fantastic. Obviously, age-old rivals Lee and Scooby crashed, which made everything perfect. Which it was going to happen, you know. That's how it had to be, and we saw Tim near the front, Royston near the front, even if it was only briefly, and it was just nice. And the race winner, Jordan will tell you in a moment, was thoroughly deserved.
It was, and that winner being Whitford, winning the 100th race. It was a cracking race. I mean, the battles were immense. The field was as packed as it gets, as Silverstone National always is. And even though Foster's is my favourite circuit, Silverstone National was a very close second for racing and watching. Yeah, me and Phil were constantly talking that there was no gap for us to take a small drink or a tiny break, because there was constantly something happening. And yeah, the 100th race was fantastic. And I think the race was brilliant. Obviously, an extra addition to the day was added for you. Earlier, I think it might have been the day before, or very early in the morning. We kind of had a bit of a special gift for you for the 100th race.
Yes, courtesy of yourself, which was very kind of you to do such a thing, and it is still appreciated to this day because it is a fantastic review of effectively the history of the Group A ones and all of its past incarnations, and it's quite emotional going back for it, to be honest. And we had everyone who had their time in the sun was announced, past champions such as RS Jim, Mid's Finest Lee, myself, Lee who's in party with us, Scooby, Omega. It was really nice to have a thing like that, and it's still very much appreciated to this day.
I've got to say, I actually enjoyed making that, and it's fair to say I went pretty retro with it. Back to the old game. God, that was a treat and a half. And I tell you the nice thing with stuff like that, going back to Project Cars 1, and obviously we don't hear any more Project Cars 1. It's pretty much a dead game, as far as it's concerned. But the noise those cars made on Project Cars 1 were immense. I mean,
yeah,
I had to, I kid you not, I ended up re-recording those Project Cars 1 scenes because I didn't realise how loud the engines were going to be.
That's because of how bad the audio was in terms of balancing in the original game. So it was a lot louder than it should have been, and it blew your speakers off when you first booted up the game. And I quite like that, to be honest with you. I don't mind at all.
But that was the 100th race, and it was something special. Whitford won it very much correctly and deservedly. Fantastic battles. So we get to the end of the season, and Jack, you work your magic yet again. It doesn't stop until these final little things come about, such as reviews and stats. And I think Lee will agree with me on this one. They are fantastic to read. To go back through a season for each driver or main drivers that compete in the season, it's a cracking review to read.
Yeah, I must say at this point, the dedication and research and work and effort and thought put in to the production of those is second to none, and it's very, very much appreciated, and I don't think there's many that can do it out there, so you should be proud of yourself, Jack.
Thanks, gents. I appreciate that.
And they're so good, I thought you could read us a couple.
I'd be willing to.
We'll start off with your own. Let's see how you review your own season, because obviously it was a good season for you in the Group A ones. In reality, even though it was only one win, it was generally a very good season. So I'll leave you to it.
This is me. This is Jack TM53 Synopsis Season Review. This is a much better season for me. A lot more consistent with his race performances, along with some brilliant overtaking manoeuvres along the way, such as free wide at Road America and a brilliant dummy at Silverstone on one high mofo. A quiet start at Brands Hatch Indy ended with a bang as Jack collided with Jamie F430 on the final straight, and they both crashed over the finish line. Jack was confirmed as fifth despite facing the wrong way. Following on from that, another quiet qualifying session at Donington Park GP saw Jack start fifth, but he quickly made his way up to second, where he spent a lot of the race having to defend from MGR Scooby G. His quiet qualifying performances continued at Spa with sixth, but he avoided the huge melee on lap 1 to emerge in third, a place he'd finish in despite not having any slipstream to benefit from. His only pole position of the season came at Bathurst again, just like in season 12, and Jack should have won, but a mistake forced by MGR Scooby G left him frustrated and he finished second. The 100th race at Silverstone was another frustrating event, as he should have been battling for a race win, but a mid-race spin saw him scrambling to recover to 5th place. In the next 2 races, he missed out on the podium on the final lap. A penalty caused him to slow down, and Jamie F30 pounced 4 corners from the end to take 3rd. Last lap contact with NGR Adam Morris again dropped Jack to 4th place at Hockenheim as Jamie took advantage of the 2 drivers going off the circuit. Jack should have won at Rouen Les Essarts, but a mistake with 3 laps to go whilst leading, and then a last lap lunge for the lead didn't pay off, and Jack again settled for 2nd. The title realistically went away from it at Road America as he barreled up to avoid contact with 2 cars in front of him, and Jack was restricted to reversing over the line in 8th as he crashed going up the hill. It finally came together though at Oulton Park as Jack finally broke his 21 winless streak and put in a great performance at his home circuit of Oulton Park before sadly disconnecting at the Nordschleife and costing him 2nd place in the championship. Jack has had a good season, but he hasn't quite got to the level I want yet. I believe he needs to find more consistency and a touch more speed if he wants to challenge for the title in season 14. But that race win at Oulton Park could be a sign he's back.
There you go. Jack's review of himself. Which I must say is very critical. It's quite nice. I mean, because obviously it can be quite hard when you do reviews for everyone to be critical of everyone else, but be biased towards yourself. But it's really nice, and I think, again, Lee will agree, that you're still very in fact, you're probably actually more critical on your own review.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's difficult though, because to not come across though, and I understand where Jack's coming from, in that people would think maybe slightly, oh, you're being a bit big-headed. That wouldn't be the case, but unfortunately that's sometimes what people would think, and so I understand why Jack takes his line. However, yes, he is too critical on himself, and obviously it'd be better coming from someone else, but he should pick himself up a bit more, yeah.
Personally, everything that I write about myself is what I believe, and it's the same for when I'm writing for everyone else in the league. And I get what you've said, Lee. If I'd had a good season and I dominated, I'd say so. If I had a terrible season, I'd say so. And this season's been a lot better, and it's been positive. I just lacked the tiniest bits of speed when I've needed it, and none more so at Bathurst. I couldn't get into the rhythm. Silverstone, I made a stupid mistake when I was quick enough to be in the lead fight, and I remember all the thought processes going through my mind at every race pretty much for the last couple of seasons, and I could identify where I've made a mistake, where I need to improve, and I ironed it out this season. I made one real big mistake, which was the one that I mentioned at Silverstone, which was caused through my own fault, and I could have avoided that very easily, and I just was a bit impatient, and it's something that I know I need to work on. My patience, although I'm very good at overtaking, we saw at the last round at Nordschleife when I was behind Adam Morris, I could have took another couple of corners to have gone past him, but I rushed it and I ended up going off into the gravel trap. And that's why I'm so self-critical, because in my mind, I need to stop doing little silly things like those 2 incidents that I mentioned, and then I've got a shot, and then a little bit more pace, and then I can beat people. But I'm not there yet. Hopefully season 14 might be different.
We'll grab one more review, and D Whitehouse 7, I think we'll go for.
Yeah.
Because he's had a bit of a mixed bag, it's fair to say.
Yeah. This is D Whitehouse 7's season review. As the debut season ends, David can look back at the races he's taken part in and be happy with his results. There's been the usual highs and lows of a debutant season, but it's the consistency that David has shown that has impressed. He started off solidly at Brands Hatch, qualified in 12th place, but was involved in a large midfield battle throughout the race. David was able to secure a debut finish in 8th position. He was part of the magnificent 7 for the next 3 results, as he finished in 7th place at Donington Park, 7th at Spa and 7th at Bathurst. The result at Spa was a missed opportunity, however, as he'd managed to miss the chaos on lap 1 and was working well with WRT Edu to catch up to Jack TM 53 and Synopsis in 3rd, before both of them shunted into the wall at Burnhamville. Despite crashing twice on lap 1 at Bathurst, David's recovery drive was really solid, as he brought himself back to finish in 7th. David drove again reliably at Silverstone in the 100th race, but didn't quite have the fortune to keep up with the manic nature of the race and finished 12th after an unseen incident dropped him down. He bounced back again at Oschersleben, where after starting 4th, David kept the car relatively on the circuit aside from lap 1 to finish in 6th, his best result of the season. He started 4th again at Zolder for the second race run and ran as high as 5th and was driving well. The chaotic nature of the final few laps, though, thanks to the heavy rain, meant he finished 8th, although a better result because of the heavy rain was snatched away from him. David doesn't like ruin layer starts, which is an understatement, and that would explain why he finished 12th. Road America was unfortunate though, as he was again running in the top 6, but he was involved in a crash with myself, and that dropped him down to 10th. David's final race of the season at Alton Park was unrewarded with a poor result of 7th. He was unfortunate as David had ran in the top 5 for a number of laps before an unseen error dropped him back towards 6th place, before another incident dropped him to his resultant position of 7th. David has had his fair share of bad luck this season. Without it, he would have had much better results, but David will be interested to watch through season 14 because he might have the ability to spring a surprise or two.
Yeah, a very mixed bag for D Whitehouse 7 there. But a lot of high points to take away from it and take into season 14, where I think he could be a very almost like a top mid-pack runner, potentially nipping on the heels of the top 5 every race.
It's not impossible. I think a top 5 and a little bit of luck to come his way might even be in a position for a couple of laps on the podium somewhere at some point. It's not improbable for that to happen. I think David has had the typical debut season. I think the only thing that he lacked at times was a bit of raw speed. Now, some people have different debut seasons over the season. We've been doing this. I mean, I could think back to Beeler 007 who raced in season 10, and his debut season was quite similar to David's in that he was not the quickest, but he was really consistent. And then his sophomore season was actually really impressive, and he brought the speed. He just had a bit of bad luck which stopped him from getting better results. And I think David's on that trajectory. He is quick. We've seen him do well in the TC leagues, where he's put the car in the front row and even led briefly at some point. I think for certain that David will have a better season 14 in terms of high points. It's whether he can be as consistent and as quick at the same time. And if he does, there's no reason why he can't get a top 5. There's no reason why a bit of luck and fortune can't get him a podium.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely one to look for in season 14. Should be very interesting. Okay, moving on to the close, obviously. In general, the Group A ones was very tight, very quick, and an incredible league to not only be a part of, but watch from my point of view. Develop, obviously the battling, the raw pace, the mistakes. It kind of had it all. It was probably one of the most rounded leagues for season 13 that had pretty much everything in it.
Yeah, it was. I say this at the end of every season. It's the best season so far, and I still maintain that for this season. We had 6 different race winners during season 13, which was quite a lot. I believe last season we had, off the top of my head, I think we had 8. That was a special, bizarre season because of fillers we had that time around, and 2 of those took it up. So 6 winners. We had a new winner for the first time this season. We had new drivers popping up. We had a couple of drivers underperforming, but they had a lot of fun battles in the mid-pack. They had a couple of drivers having days where they overachieved, and were running quite well. There's a couple of moments off the top of my head where I can think of. Royston was in fourth, running in fourth for the big battle at Spa in the M1, and he drove really well. And there's other moments like Fraser getting his first podium of the season. At the Nordschleife, considering he'd had a lot of bad luck at certain races, and he should have done a lot better this season because he's a fantastic driver. And like you said, the action has been great. There's been battles all up and down the field. Everyone has found a rival of some sort during their races. I don't think there's anyone in the grid who's sort of by themselves. And it's been a clean season. All the issues we've had, apart from at Spa where there was one problem that needed to be dealt with, was normally due to an accident which was resolved very quickly, or it was lag at the start. And that's the big thumbs up from me, because it's meant my evenings have been a lot considerably shorter than other championships.
Yeah, I'd agree with that analogy. But that is the Group A1's review. Now, before Lee decides to go to sleep, we'll move on to the modern touring cars. And obviously the second of the leagues, hosted by Lee. I think I'll let Lee fully introduce it with what I believe was the same format this season.
Yes, we continued in what is now, just trying to think, 10, 11, season 12, season 13. So that was the third season of touring cars. Season 10 and 11 started with 2 rounds, then we swapped it and introduced the Clios and dropped the second round, and continued in that fashion, which has seemed to be very popular. I think for the last 4, 5, 6 rounds, or the second half of the season, I was having to turn drivers away because we didn't have enough for 2 rooms, and there was always too many for 1, and it was frustrating because I really don't like turning people away. I want everyone to get a drive, and I think a couple of drivers that wanted to race and signed up as reserves thought they might have been racing and sadly got turned away. But anyway, aside from that, yeah, it's been another very successful season 13, and saw a return to form for some and a continuation of very good form for others.
Indeed, obviously no changes made to the formats. It works quite well, obviously 5-minute qualifying, which causes all sorts of havoc. It's fair to say, and not in a bad way either. I mean, it's a cracking little session, and it can really make the difference of the battles within the field, because you could have some of the lower end drivers qualify up quite high, because in some of the races you only get one shot.
Yeah, it does put the onus on nailing one lap of possibly only 2 laps that you're going to have opportunity for. The reason behind it was not intentional for that reason, but due to the time constraints of having 3 race series in one evening, and obviously the late finishes, had to keep, sort of keeping the length of time down of things. So that was the reason behind that. However, I'm quite sort of glad that it's forced the hand in that way, because it makes it very exciting, and it puts everyone forces everyone to be on their game, and it makes for interesting qualifying.
Yeah, now let's have a look at the season. Started off in Zhuhai, and what a cracking start to a season. Probably the best start to the modern touring cars to date for a series, for the season, really.
Yeah, I think I remember you and I talking about the fact, I think it was a full season before I decided, or it was the previous season, sorry, that we raced an eye on. I can't remember what it was now. You might be able to.
It was in the review. It was in the preview for season 12 that we were going to race for Zhuhai in season 13. You went, yes, that's going to go straight in.
But the reason for it, I think, was because wasn't it in the race of winners final?
We were in McLaren, weren't we? In the long tail, the McLaren F1 and the race of winners, and
Yeah,
that was
and
awesome.
and I just said, do you know what? This race is unbelievable. And then we tried it in the tours afterwards, I think, and it was like, that's going to be my the first track selection for season 13, and it was decided well before the season started. So yeah, it was a cracking track to start, and it produced a really good race.
And the ending was quite interesting because obviously Scooby G and Adam Morris were having a cracking battle. And Scooby G just made that one mistake. And it cost him.
Yeah, it did. I'm actually helping remind my poor memory. I'm looking at Jack's spreadsheet showing the results with Scooby making that mistake, which obviously hasn't reminded me. So Scooby thus taking second place after Adam, and that was my first podium, I think, in 2 seasons. My first race back with in the new season with confidence. So it was very pleasing for my good self as well. With Jack following in behind, albeit he also got pole, so I took the extra point.
Yeah, it was a mixed bag, that race, because Scooby got the penalty at the final corner. That's where he got it, and it gave Adam the perfect start to the season. Obviously, I said in your review that it was a perfect tonic because you had a really difficult season 12. I think in season 12, I think the best result was, I think it had been 5th, I think at Imola.
Yeah,
just looking back at it now, yeah, it was 5th at Imola.
It was 2
Oh no,
seasons
sorry.
of Fauna, so it was
Yeah.
season 10 I was Victor, and I went from hero to zero, and then spent 2 seasons dragging my backside around the back with no podiums. It was very bizarre.
And that could happen.
Oh yeah.
The race could have been even better for me. I stuck it at pole, and thanks to a cheeky little toe from Jamie, and I led the first lap and 2, and then obviously there was contact and I went flying off the road, and that was that, which is frustrating. But I was happy, considering.
Yeah, I mean, it's fair to say that the modern touring cars, even though the Group A's are tight, the modern touring cars are just even tighter because the weapon of choice is the Megane. Always has been, always will be in this game at the moment, unless they nerf a few things. So in that respect, even though it's the modern touring cars, it's very one make-ish. And that really does glue the field together. I mean, obviously at the start of the season you have a few BMWs in the line, but it does keep the field tucked in together.
Yeah, these, like you say, because the weapon of choice is the Megane, and that for the fact that the game and how it's been made favours the, what should we say, you can be very much more easily consistent in this car and to be quick than the other cars. The BMW can be a quicker car to drive, but it's that much more difficult to master. Sadly, as Jack found out to his detriment, the Astra is just slow, and the Merc is okay, but it's not as good as the Megane. So because everyone jumps in the Megane, thus it makes for an amazing championship. And I'm, as much as I love variety on the grid, what I've always wanted, my sole goal in running leagues and running competitive racing, is to have the racing close and tight, because there's nothing more boring than running around with free air in front and behind of you doing laps, because you might as well just be a time trialer, beating world records, saying I'm the best, when because there's no racecraft involved, there's no fun involved, it's just the chasing times. Whereas stick yourself in a Megane with 12 of your mates, come and race in here, and you will be absolutely buzzing, and that's what it's all about.
Yeah, and it continued into Snetterton 300, where Scooby won. Courtesy
Yes.
of a penalty from Jack. And yet again, the final corner of the lap caused chaos for the race leader.
Yeah,
Sorry,
I can't
Jack.
recall too much of that one. I think
I
had
can.
yeah, you can. I had a pole and a fourth in the end, which was disappointing with Martin finishing third, you having second, and Jack having the win. So you can, as you can remember what happened, do tell.
Yeah, so the race was basically split into two halves. You and Martin got off up the road.
Yeah.
I decided to go for a drink somewhere and completely forgotten to qualify at some point. I got some water and got 11th on the grid with my one lap. And I'd managed to charge up to fourth, but we weren't going to catch you and Martin up front. And then I remember you made a mistake, or you put it on the curb and took Martin off with you. I think it's at Hamilton. It's the
That's
left-hander
right.
in the...
Yes.
I'll remember now. Yeah,
And
right
you
hand
two
wheel
went
on the
off,
curb. Whoosh.
and it went. Both of you went, and it brought me, Scooby, and I think someone else came
Jamie.
with us at the time.
Because I hate to tell you,
Yeah,
Ginge,
Jamie as well.
I hate to tell you, Lee, you actually finished 5th at Snetterton, not 4th.
I'm just looking because there was three
No,
of
he was
us.
fourth.
There's three of us with 13 points on your table, Jack.
Because there was an incident
Yes,
Uh,
and we
that
scored.
dropped Jamie away from the battle, and the points were adjusted for
Yes.
13 for him.
And I had 12 with a bonus point for 13, and
Yeah.
Adam had 13 correctly. Yes, I remember now.
And obviously, me sniffing the wind, decided to charge past the two of you on the inside. I think it was Lee and Scooby were on the left of me. I went round the outside of his going under a bridge to take the lead. And I thought I was going to take the win. And then you gave me a bloody tap at turn 2 on the final lap. Because you ran deep and gave me a little nudge and it threw me off. Which stopped my gap. And I went wide at the final corner. And I thought it was a very harsh penalty to get because I was first over the line. But no, second it was. And it's the second time in 2 seasons I'd lost the lead on the final lap.
Yeah, that whole thing was that whole race was a mess. Me and Mark
Yeah,
should never thrown it away. When I hit you, you didn't go off, but I stayed behind you, but it slowed you right down. Thus, obviously that put Jeff back in the mix, and then put him past me as well. If we'd not made a mistake, we'd have carried through and had 1-2. If I'd not made a mistake before, I'd have carried through with Martin. But it was just one of those bloody races, wasn't it? It's just fun, so much fun, but frustrating at the same time.
I was screaming internally because, obviously, as you alluded to before, I drove the Astro season 12 and I hadn't tasted success in a long time. So I had to deal with that.
Yeah.
but your win came in the next round, Jack, at Fuji. And it was a very well-driven race, I have to say. Fuji's a weird one. It's not the easiest circuit. If you can master it, it's a really nice circuit to drive. But if you don't like it, don't get on with it, it's really horrible. There's no in-between with this circuit.
I don't know if you remember much of that race day at Fuji. I think you were quite quick, but something happened.
Yeah, it was another one of those for me. I can't remember what happened, but I do remember actually what happened. Coming out of the last corner,
Yes.
without losing or gaining any time, but just putting literally what is it that P-Cars accepts 0.003 of a mil over the white line, and you get a penalty. That was it. So I then obviously had to brake, and it's at the beginning of the longest straight in the game. So hence I went from on the back of the pack with the possible I'm going to fight you lot and get a podium easily to I was 5 seconds behind by the end of the bloody, 3-4 seconds behind by the end of the straight, and you're just never going to make that sort of thing up. So yeah, that was my story. But, just looking at the results there, you won the race, Scooby who was second, and Martin came third.
That was the thing. I finished second on the road, but was given the win because Scooby and me had an incident where it pushed me off the road and I had to fall back, and it was adjudged that I should have won. So I got the victory. which, although I was very happy with the victory, it still rubbed me the wrong way that I've done it on track yet. The biggest star of the show, and I think Jordan will remember this from commentary, was Slidergas in the BMW.
Hmm.
Because he pulled, I managed to nip away from everyone, I was pulling away. But then Slidergas, with the power of the BMW, just pulled his way back in and led, got past me, and then spun at the second to last corner. Put it on a put it on the curve, and he was gone.
Moving on then to round 4, Silverstone National. It was it was meant to be the same night as the 100th race, if I remember correctly.
Appears the network put an end to that.
Yes, it did. But Jack, you second win in a row.
That was great.
And it was a fantastic race.
I wanted that win.
So did I. I was so much looking forward to the race as well. I was proper hyped. I knew I was on pace, and I knew it was going to be tight because it's like Silverstone's like Brands Indy. Everyone is all over each other, and the top 10 to 12 are covered by less than a second in qualifying. And I was like, this is going to be, going to have to be right on your game, no mistakes, because everyone will be over everyone. But if you keep your nerve, you've got a good chance. And I was buzzing for it, and it turned out to be a brilliant race. I got a decent second place behind you, Jack, and Fraser pulled in for behind us.
I think we had, it was a... Sorry, go on, John.
I was just going to say, I think that was probably the scrap of the season, in all fairness, around Silverstone. It was constantly... You could almost see, especially between you two, your brains ticking as you're going down the straight. See Jack like, do I need to defend into here, or can I get away with trying to carry the pace through the corner? Lee deciding what he was going to do on the straight, whether he was going to settle a dummy, just go for it, back out of it, try and get a run. It was such a technical battle, and it was so brilliantly done. It made it very, very interesting, because it's quite hard sometimes to make a very strategical, tactical battle like yours was quite interesting, because sometimes it can just look like you're not trying. But round Silverstone, it was a proper... They're having a proper go at this, and you could practically see your brains ticking along. It was fantastic.
I think... Go on, Lee, go on, because I know you're going to say...
No, I was you carry on, mate. That's cool.
I think the reason why mine and Lee's battles are always quite intense is because I think, to be honest with you, our first rival was each other. We've got a long history. I mean, the first league race I ever did, the biggest battle in the Clios at Hockenheim was against Lee, and that was 3 years ago. And today's, funnily enough, as you sent me this morning, Lee, our 3-year friendversary. Other social media networks are available, I'll say that much now. And we just have an understanding when we race. There's always someone that you race against, so you know how they're going to react, how they're going to battle, what they're going to do. And Lee's always the biggest pain in the backside to try and overtake against. But I had to work hard for that, and to get that victory was so satisfying, especially against Lee and against Fraser. Candice was also in that race. He was a filler. Martin was involved in the big on battle too, and it was a really good race. That was the same race that David Whitehouse stuck it on second place and led briefly on the first lap, and that threw a big spanner in the works.
Yeah, I would just like to say Scooby is actually listening into this now, which is good to have him here. He just put the words dive bomb.
Yeah, well, we know about Jeff the dive bomb at Scooby G Perkis, don't we?
So moving on from Silverstone, hang on, no we don't. Let me get the right tab.
Road America.
It was Road America, and it's fair to say this was, although an action-packed race, quite a disappointing one, not personally for you, Lee, but just a general disappointment. And it's kind of understandable with this one, even though the racing was good generally, there was quite a lot of instances which made it quite a disappointing one for yourself.
Yeah, there was a good few incidents to look at afterwards. I'd built myself up towards this one quite well. My practice, I was feeling reasonably confident. I seemed to be on pace, and it all sort of fell apart, unfortunately, in the first few laps for me. And I think the whole race then ended up being a little bit protracted in its lack of battles and excitement. So it didn't turn out to be the race I was hoping it could be. And I think that track is actually a really good one. And I just think we just had an off night as a league, maybe.
I think to be honest with you, because of the way the race worked, there was a couple of things that were unseen by Jordan, and again, I don't blame Jordan because it's quite difficult to cover everything. You know, your big slide going into turn 3 while I was behind you, which blocked me, which was fantastic. And then, I mean, you spun off as well further around a lap. I think it was just me and you battling for second at that point. Because of all the stuff that had happened, Scooby had slipped off into the distance and wasn't going to be seen again. And I think the thing is, there are certain tracks in America that don't work with some of the leagues in the Monday Night Tours. It's like we'll never go back to Laguna Seca in the Group A ones because it just doesn't work. Now, Road America is a fantastic track. I just think these cars are better suited elsewhere. Now, that's my opinion, but Lee might think different.
Yeah, I think it's one of those that you've got to have a. I don't know, I wouldn't say this in the right way, but I think everyone's got to be in the right mindset and not work together, but be sensible about it, or else you just spread out. It's like I haven't often taken the touring cars to Spa. I love the track, and don't think it's a massively touring car suiting track. I could do with a short version of it, if you know what I mean. So getting rid of some of the long straights and because I still like to go on it, but I don't avoid it for that reason. But I think Road America's in the Spa bracket in respect to touring cars.
But in the end, obviously, Scooby won it, Jack second. You finished fourth in the end, Lee. Who finished third? Oh, MLV. This was the debut of MLV.
Yeah, debut for Harry. Young Harry, who's just 17, turns 18 on the 27th of April. New addition to a few different groups actually, but he seemed to have settled in quite well with us and enjoying himself here, but he races in other groups as well. But yeah, he showed very good initial form. He's got a karting background, so he knows his racing. I'm not sure how long he's been online racing, sim racing, but he showed his hand. Couple commented he was quite an aggressive defender, however he wasn't doing anything wrong. I think that's just from his karting experience, and since that first round then moving on, he's as we'll probably mention a few other times, he's up the sharp end straight away, so a very promising prospect for future seasons.
Yeah, and I mean, podium on debut the only way to beat that really is to be winning on your debut.
Yeah, it was impressive.
After Road America, we went to Holton Park Island. Again, a cracking circuit. Always love Holton Park. And I think we can all say Scooby G won it, and it was pretty much the perfect race.
Yeah, it was. Pains me to say it slightly because Jeff's so bloody good and he just keeps doing it every season. He's probably got more titles in Next Gen, I think, than anybody else, hands down. And that was one of his flawless drives. He doesn't have them very often because we don't nickname him Dive Bomb Dick for nothing. But I hope you're all enjoying that. But yeah, it was. I remember Jack saying straight away afterwards, he just didn't put a foot wrong. He didn't put a tyre off the track. He didn't go near anyone. It was just one of those drives that it's like, if we could all drive like that once in a while.
I'm going to mention this at the end when it comes to reviews and such. But I'll have a little thing in now. I drove quick that race, and I was on pace with Scooby, but he drove probably the most perfect race I think I've ever seen in Next Gen. I've never seen, and bear in mind we've had Jake Dennis race with us in our leagues. I've never seen anyone drive that consistently for 12 laps around Alton Park. I was stunned by the end of it.
Yeah.
And it was just, one of the best drives in TC history. Yeah, very easily.
And the thing is,
still shocks me now thinking about it. To be honest.
You always know when someone's driven stupidly well because they never feature on the stream very long. That's how you.
They're boring to watch at the front. Yeah, exactly.
And
you can't help it.
No, I think I went to Scooby about twice just to check up on him, just to say, oh, by the way, this is your leader, and then I went straight back off of him. Pretty much, it was that's a sign of a near perfect race when you don't get shown. In some respects, it's kind of a shame that the person doesn't get shown because it doesn't really show the way they're driving. I think I went on board with him for a little bit just to show the way he was driving and just to put that in there, because otherwise you get this perfect race and you hardly see it.
Yeah.
Alton Park that day was full of drivers performing really well. No one was at Scooby's level, but Whitford finished third in the BMW, which is an impossible result.
First podium of the season.
First podium of the season, and I think only podium of the season for Josh. And then Adam Morris coming from 15th on the grid to finish 6th. Which is, again, equally as impressive as what Whitford was able to do. But Whitford was just in that BMW around that track. Really well driven. Really well.
Yeah, it was awesome. Yeah.
Just like I say, Scooby's just said, "Love you, Jack. Thank you for your kind words."
Only the truth.
So after a near perfect round from Scooby G in round 6, we headed on to round 7, and it was Sakito GP. Again, a few incidents during the race. It's fair to say it was a bit of a little bad patch, and I kind of want to say I blame it because it's season 13 and 13 is just an unlucky number. But again, Scooby G won another race. It was getting consistently another one. It was very consistently at the top for Scooby G by this point.
That was his 4th victory and 6th podium of 7 races. The other 2 were seconds, and then at Silverstone was his worst result, just off the podium. So yes, he was carrying very, very good form.
I think the even more worrying thing about that point was he went into this sequence, and I know we're going to touch on it in a few moments, but he went on a sequence of 5 pole positions. That's just insane. It just doesn't happen in the Touring Car League. It's just not something that happens.
Season 10 it did.
For a certain someone.
I don't think I had 5, I think it was 4, but anyway, it does happen now and again.
But to do 5 is just...
That's crazy.
Mega.
Crazy, yeah.
So obviously Scooby G won that. I'm just trying to have a look. Adam Morris took 2nd. And I think this was the first race Adam Morris was in the Megane, because I think he stuck it out with the BMW up until Alton Park. He changed them again, and immediately a result came off second place. And Martin's third on the podium. I think at this point Martin was like he was having up and down season, but generally he had the pace for podiums nearly every race.
I think Martin improved the season before last. He stepped up. He found something somewhere. He regained his confidence. And I don't think this season was his best. I think he could have been better this season. He had a lot of bad luck, and is also fighting a deteriorating wheel, which I've spoke to him about on a few times. And he's not in a position to replace. So he's got a T300, I think, but it's been deteriorating with its performance, as well as a few unlucky incidents. So yeah, that was a good podium for him, but only his third podium, which were all thirds of the 7 rounds. So he probably deserved better results up to that point. But it was good for him to get one at that point there.
So from Sakito, you go to Donington National, and again, my favourite track to drive, Donington. I mean, I kind of classify that as my home track, so it's brilliant to watch it. And I believe, yes, this was it. Jack came first. Again, a very well-driven, race. And I believe who was
Scooby
second?
was second with pole.
Yes.
Sorry. No.
Boy Raxer
yes.
was second.
No. Boy Raxer was second as a filler. Yes. Very quick. Benji jumped in as a guest because there was room, and stole a very good second, which put Jeff to third.
And the battle between Jack and Boy Raxer was the main event. I'm not gonna lie, I'm not gonna sugarcoat it. It was the main event because you two were absolutely attached to each other. It was like someone put super glue on your bumpers.
I just couldn't shake him off. No matter what I did, and I learned that was the day when I learned that how Boy Raxer races is that he doesn't move his car when he doesn't need to, and I learned that for the first time that race because he was close, but he just couldn't quite get in a position to make a move that wouldn't take us out. And I drove, I think it was about 15 laps of when he got into second place. It was inch perfect, and if I'd have made a mistake, he'd have gone through and he'd have been gone. And I was so proud. I was jumping up and down like a nutter when I crossed the line because I was so happy with that win. And admittedly, it would prove to be the last high point of my season, but it was something that I'm very, very proud of.
Now, that was a big talking point, but there's another big talking point because we've seen it in the Group A1s, stupid disqualification penalties, and we saw it in the modern touring cars. Because, Ginge, it was your turn.
Yeah, it was. I'm not quite sure what to say about that.
I mean, as far as penalties go, we know they're pretty ridiculous in project cars, but this kind of takes the biscuit at times.
Yeah, I've got to be honest, I'm just trying to remember what it was now.
I believe it was down the Craners. Someone spun, you went on the grass to avoid everything.
Right. Yes,
made up a place.
Right. So there was a spinner in front of me down the Craners. We came down, you come off first, the second bend, you start to come down the hill. As it kinks around to the first bit of the left, the car in front of me lost it. I think it was Whitford in the Beamer. Could be wrong, I think it was him. And then,
It was contact, wasn't there?
As he was spinning, I then anchored up to try and avoid him, but he then span across the front of me, so I had a minor bit of contact, and then I carried on. But it classed me as hitting him, obviously, even though he's out of control and going across my front end, and I was obviously locked up. And it said, give the place back. I saw him spinning off behind me and thought, well, I might as well just call my race quits if it happens. This wasn't my fault. And I chose to carry on, and I was going to send it to the stewards, obviously not involving me, for them to make a decision on whether I should get my penalty. Now, due to me not giving the place back, it then gave me a pit penalty. as I didn't go into the pit, it qualified me as I crossed the line for the last lap. So I obviously then sent that back, and they gave me the position that I finished in as I was disqualified. Obviously, game's at fault there because I didn't cause anything. I wasn't at fault for anything. It should never have issued me a penalty in the first place. So I didn't miss out. I just I got the points for the position, but it meant two of us got those points, and the game was foolishly messing us about again.
Funnily enough, it was Jamie who was the same point scored as you for that one.
Yeah.
Because you got a notional fifth.
Yeah. Which is the position I was in at the time, which was
Yeah.
fair enough because I carried on battling. I didn't, I couldn't go forward anymore, but I shouldn't have gone back. And so hence, yeah, it was the right decision to make by the stewards and for me to appeal it. So, and this is what we say to anyone listening now that, gets annoyed by Project Cars 2 for inappropriate punishments, then we always say now, and we've been saying it for some time now, you can drive through it, send it up, clip it up, send it to us, and we'll judge accordingly to what's correct. The actual driving, not for what the game gives you.
On to round 9, Watkins Glen. Again, a very quick circuit, Watkins Glen. Jack, you disconnected from this one.
This was really annoying because I was looking forward to charging through the field.
Boy Raxer won it from Scooby G. It was fair to say Boy Raxer he didn't run away with it because Scooby was still in touching distance, and by the end of the race, Scooby G was right on Boy Raxer, and it was a very good clinical display by the pair of them, a bit like Boy Raxer and Jack in Donington. It was very... It was. But again, both of them very clinical driving, no contact, and it was very, very nice to watch. And going down through the order, really, see Adam Morris finishing third. He's quite quiet this season, Adam Morris. He was quietly picking up points here, like on certain circuits. Obviously, he had his retirements, but he was like very silently just picking points up.
I think when you switch car mid-season, it's quite difficult to try and pick up any sort of form. And I mean, obviously, Adam had that win earlier on in the season in the BMW, and then everything just fell apart, and had to switch to them again. And then, well, we'll get on to the next part later.
Just to elaborate a little bit on that decision of swapping car, he'd been heavily in discussions or chatting with me and Jamie, because the Beamer, while it's a challenging car to drive but quick, it presents a massive issue in that with the slightest bits of contact, and you're on a merry-go-round. And unfortunately, Adam kept getting stuck in mid-pack with some of the drivers that are still learning their craft, let's say, and developing their skills. And unfortunately, he'd been rubbing Adam up, and for the amount of times that he was unintentionally had unintentional contact from other drivers, and it was just putting him off and ruining his race every time. And he was getting to the point where he was just frustrated at racing because he wasn't enjoying it. And I just turned around as the host and the leader of it, as the host and organiser of the league, and said, "Look, Ads, if you want to change your car, I'm going to say the same to any other BMW driver. You're all suffering with it, then feel free." And I thought it was a fair thing to do because I think he was going to drop out anyway, because all he was getting was contact and being spun out, and there was no fun for him every race. So, hence the decision for the Beamer changes. They were driven by me.
Yeah, and it's quite nice to kind of see that, because obviously in some leagues, obviously, you just get told you picked it, you stick with it, but in these ones, it's quite nice where we can be flexible just to say, look, everyone that's in this car, we know it's a pain in the arse, we know it's not going to go well, we know if you're not enjoying the racing, you have this one chance, change the car and carry on, because in theory you've already lost points just by driving that car.
Yeah.
But after Watkins Glen, after going to America, we head to Brands Hatch Indy, and as always, the homeboy ruled, shall we say? At his home circuit, Scooby G, he pretty much walked away with that win.
Yes, and that was his, where are we, 6th victory of the season. Which is just Jeff all over it. Pole position and the win. There's not much more we can say. We've talked a lot about him. He's brilliant. And he put in another great performance at what we class as his home circuit, really. Bit of a master there now. It was a good second place for Fraser, which is his second podium of the season, but his highest podium so far, which I think was pleasing for Fraser, because I don't think he really had the didn't really have the season that he should have had. He was in much better form in the past, and I don't think it's gone his way this past season. So it was good to see him take that. And then third was Martin with another podium to add to the other 3 or 4 that he'd already had. So he was carrying some better results and confidence through.
Yeah, it was nice to see Fraser back at the front. It's where he belongs, especially in the title he was trying to defend. All season he just wasn't quite on it. And yeah, Brands was the first time he looked back in form, and it was really weird for Fraser because, correct me if I'm wrong, but was that the first Next Gen title he's won?
Not sure. Possibly. Quite possibly, yes.
It was weird really to see that happen to Fraser. He win a title and then come back and it was almost nowhere. I mean, I think it was a shock to everyone.
Yeah, I felt for him, and obviously because it's exactly what happened to me from season 10 to season 11. We going from heroes to zeros. We win a championship, come in with confidence, thinking, yeah, I'm off the back of that, and then ended up having a sort of no season sort of thing where you get very little podiums and you seem to have sort of lost form and confidence. But I think it was just racing and depending on what's going on in your lives, how much you're committing to. I mean, I was trying to do Group A's. I think Fraser was doing a lot of racing as well. So I had Group A's, then there was the TCC, then there was the Clears all in one night. And I had no time to practice for all 3 of them, so I was coming up and just being rubbish in all 3. And ended up doing that for a season and a half. Fraser, maybe in similar things, he's been doing a lot of racing, confidence was up, and I think he's stepped back a little bit more now to home down, and I see he's been taking part in some the Electrovision races, the triple threats, and doing really well. So I think he's refinding his confidence and form again, and he's going to be another threat again next season.
I still add to that there's never been a back-to-back champion in the TC League since we've introduced it, and every season so far the champion has then gone on to have a middling season afterwards. Like you mentioned then in season 10 where he went to season 11, Omega won season 11, but he was nowhere in season 12 really.
Yeah. So Jeff, take note, mate. Sorry. But yes, it's strange thing, isn't it? It's the TCC curse. It's a championship curse, maybe. Interesting.
So we then went to Monza GP. A good track. I mean, if I remember correctly, we went from the junior layout to this one for this season, if I'm correct.
Wasn't we originally going to do the shorter version, and then you made the decision to go to the full GP, didn't you, Lee?
To be honest, no. I was always on the GP circuit with the TCCs. I considered going onto the short track for the Clios.
Okay, that's
but that was very close to the actual race itself, and then we did a practice. I think it was literally the week before. Yes, it was the week before the round, and we all went out on it, and we all just stoved into each other in the first corner because there's no markers, nobody knew where it was, and I went, we ain't racing around here. So it was always the GP for both in the end. But no, I never considered the TCC to go on the short circuit. Yeah, it was only the Clios, but that lasted literally one corner and in practice. And then I changed my mind.
But Adam Morris won that, and it was a fun-filled race. It was fair to say, if I remember it correctly. MLV managed to get pole position, and it was a hell of a time he done for a short qualifying.
Yeah.
I believe, if I'm reading that correctly, a 56.9, a 156.9. It was absolutely incredible. I mean, the race fastest lap was a 56.3, and that was from D Whitehouse 7. And most likely because he was in a massive train of cars with slipstream. So in that respect, the qualifying time from MLV was fantastic. And Omega turned up and took second, which was fantastic to see, considering he's obviously family life, personal life changes he's been going through, and he's now managed to get the time to come back and race for a bit. It was a fantastic drive from him, and it was good to see him back on form.
Yeah, it was nice for Gary to jump in. I know the last couple of weeks he tried to get in. I think the first couple he got in, and then we were oversubscribed, and because he was a filler, I unfortunately had to. I think 1 week he didn't get to race, but the rest of the times he did, because there was like 3 or 4 fillers, and he signed up first. But yeah, it was good to see him back. He's taken a new job on. He took his HGV license. I think he's long distance lorry driving and stuff like that. And also with his because of that, the commitment to the family needs to be more. So sadly, he had to drop out, which is a loss, because he's one of the sharp end top runners, always has been. So to have him back as a guest, you always know he was going to be back up at the sharp end, more than likely, and he went and proved that straight away. So
I think, and the other resulting top 3 there, who sort of redeemed his season despite missing most of it, was Slightly Gas. He got further, and the one thing I'd like to point out, not just in the races where the BMW was arguably the quicker car, and I'm talking about Fuji and Monza, he was the quickest of the BMW drivers. That's him and Whitford, and that's a big achievement, considering the fact that he'd been away for 8 weeks, because he was away after the Christmas break as well. I thought that was really impressive. Now, there are other things that Slightly Gas needs to work on, and he's already served the penalty for my league anyway from the last race at the Nordschleife, so he's got a fresh start hopefully for season 14. I know that's not the case for yours, Lee, but if you look at how he drove, he could have won that race. The big loser in that race was MLV. He led for most of it, and then got something happened that dropped him to second. I can't quite remember, and then he got tapped off the circuit. And he only finished, I think it was 6th in the end.
6th in the end.
Yeah, it was really unfortunate, because he led for most of the race, and it was really, really good driving from him.
yeah, I can't remember what happened. I'm trying to think whether there was some sort of minor incident with somebody else, and unfortunately it put him right back. I can't remember now, but yeah, it was unfortunate for Harry.
He had a tap from Fraser on the final lap when he was in second, which dropped him right down the back, because he had to go across the chicane, and which was really unlucky. But it was an accident, and these things can happen sometimes. I'm sure his first win in the TCs will come at some point, sooner rather than later. It was just unlucky that it didn't happen at Monza, because it arguably should have been his win.
Yes. Yeah, without a doubt. But we go to the final round at Nürburgring. Interesting circuit, and it produced some good action. Scooby G taking the win. Obviously, he was crowned season 13 champion
At Monza.
Yeah, previous round. Yeah.
And yet again, he signed off another season by winning the final race, getting the fastest lap. MLV yet again taking pole position. with a 31.6, which was only half a second off of the race fastest lap. Him finishing second behind Scooby G, it was a good race between the two. And third, if I go back on it, was Yuli. It was a good result for you to end on.
Yeah, I look forward to this one because, one, personally, I hadn't raced Nürburgring, either GP or short, for a long, long time. And it not been featured in any leagues that I've been racing in, or my own leagues. I'm saying that, I think it was only my own leagues I've been racing in, Group A's and the Monday Night Tourers. So I'd not been on it for ages, and I thought I'd put Brand in the middle instead of the traditional first. So I wanted to finish with something short, because as you've seen from the tracks we've gone through, there was a lot of longer circuits with Monza, Road America, Fuji. So I wanted to finish on a shortish sort of track. And yeah, I went in there feeling pretty confident. I put a fair bit of practice in. I thought this should be a nice, competitive, close race, and it turned out to be a bit of a really enjoyable race, I think. Despite the positioning, I had such good battles. I wasn't worried. To have a podium was pretty much a bonus to the end of a good finish to a season. So
We ran it, didn't we, in season 11? Nürburgring short.
So it's a couple of seasons back, and if you work that out, that's 12, and then 4/16. That's about 20 weeks, 22 weeks.
Something like that.
Official race on there, yeah.
Yeah, it was the first time I ever got a win on the wheel back in season 11. Well, in the TC League anyway, when you three jumped the start. Which you remember now.
Was that all? Oh my gosh, yeah. There's three of us. We all jumped.
This is a blast back to the past. I started fourth on the grid, and Omega, Scooby, and Lee all jumped the start, and I had to take drive-through penalties.
I remember that, I think. But, yeah, obviously Jack, you were fourth, but I think this was the race that showed that MLV is going to be one to watch for season 14 if he can get a full campaign in. Because Scooby G did not drop him very well at all. He was right there, all race. Yes, again, Scooby G drove pretty much inch perfect. To make sure he didn't lose the race, but MLV next season is going to be a real handful for the top guys.
If he's in and racing with us, he's my top tip for next season, without a doubt. He's already shown that he can go out and win a race, and then gives anyone a run for their money. So yeah, if we were putting odds on and laying some money down at the bookies, my money would be on Ari to be poking Jeff right in the rear bumper.
I'll get the odds off of Jack Bet for you.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, I mean, there's no doubt he's definitely contender. He's just got to get a full season in and try and stay out of trouble, because he's been caught up in a few incidences. None of them really actually his fault, but if he can try and keep out of trouble a bit more, I think he could have probably won this season.
Yeah,
in a
I
race.
reviewed a fair few incidences that he was involved with or part of. I don't think there were really any I found him at fault. A couple were racing incidents, and others were, the other driver should have acted differently. So yes, he's been in a couple of unfortunate positions. But I think if he can balance his student life, because he's only, like I say, just turning 18 very soon, and I know he's at uni. So if he can balance that and commit to a full league, I think we may possibly have a new title challenger on our hands.
He's at uni, he'll have loads of bloody time.
Yeah.
So that was season 13, a very up and down season. It ended on a high. So it started on a high, kind of went to a low point halfway in the season, and then it ended on a really big high, which was quite nice. Quite nice to see near the end is that obviously less incidents and more action, really. Which I guess in your eyes as host, Lee, that was quite nice to see that rise in performance of the league again.
Yeah, being brutally honest, I've had more to do with this season than the other season. However, yes, it was pleasing to be a little bit less at the very end, but it has been a little bit of an incident-packed season for things to look at, and I think it stems down to, and to me, I'm sure Jack you'll agree, but there seems to have been a definitive difference in the front pack and the mid to back pack, in that there's a speed difference, there's a little bit of a skills difference, and the guys that are in that pack behind, they're all developing and learning, and there's been a few times where a quicker guy's been in the back, and there's just been that not quite the right sort of racecraft decision made. And to be fair to these these guys that are learning, it's because they're learning, it's because they're not as experienced as the other guys, and so this is what happens in racing. But I have seen that there's that gap in the middle of space, and then you've got the front lot, and you've got the mid pack lot, and you watch the mid pack guys, and they're a little bit more. You can see they're different because they're not quite as, I don't know, experienced, developed, skilled, however you want to put it. I don't want this to sound derogative. I don't mean it in any way like that. Everyone's, some of us have been racing for absolutely years. We're old. Let's put it that way. Others are very highly skilled because they're naturally talented. And then the other guys, they're coming along, and everyone's developing at different levels. Unfortunately, sometimes the mix doesn't quite work, and you get these incidences. But if you look at some of the replays, some of the point of views, some of the streams, and you've got some of the guys at the sharp end, and they're all over each other, side to side, front to back, swapping positions, lap after lap, corner after corner, and they hardly touch. If they do, it's a minor bit of paint trading, like in touring cars, and they survive and they carry on. Unfortunately, it's not quite as simple as that when you move back in the pack a little bit. And it's all because they're just learning and developing, and they'll all get better, and they've got to go through this transition. And unfortunately, I think we suffered a little bit more of that this season, and I spent many a Monday night up until about 1, 2 o'clock sending messages, reviewing bloody videos, and it's part and parcel of what's gone on.
Now, go back to my notes. As always, Jack, yet again very kindly and very well done, puts up reviews for this league. Now, obviously, these are the only two, Jack, that you do the reviews for. You don't do them for the Clios because it's quite hard to do that one. As there's no real commentary to help you back up anything you kind of say. Because obviously you're concentrating on your own race, and the Clios it's a bit of a different ball game because it's obviously we'll get onto them in a minute. But from your point of view, obviously you've done this before I started commentating. But how much easier does it make it having a broadcast there for you? How much easier does it make for you personally?
For the reviews. When I had to do the reviews for the Group A ones and the TC League back in season 10, when I had to do it off memory and I had to try and remember everything, it was exceptionally difficult. Now obviously with you commentating, it makes life a lot better and easier for me because you could pick up on details and I can pick up on details that I might have missed. Sometimes you could say someone finished 14th and you think, oh, they had a rubbish race. No, they could have been 5th and then an incident dropped them all the way down. And just little things like that. And it really helps getting another view that isn't your own, because then you can see what's going on all around you, and that's the big benefit to the reviews, because then it means everything's much more tighter and accurate. And it's been a big help using that as the archive.
And as always, you brilliantly written again this season. And we're going to have a couple from you, if you don't mind.
That's fine.
and we'll start off not at the front. I want to have a look at Tim. Now, I know Tim is obviously near the back of the pack, but again, he's improving, and I think having his review and showing that he's improving will almost inspire the racers that maybe aren't on the level, or on a similar level to Tim was maybe like a season or two ago, because it do show improvement.
Well, I can happily start Tim's season review if you wish, Jordan.
Yes, please, go ahead.
This is NGR Tim's 17th Season 13 review for the TCA League. Despite the reduction in his average stats from Season 12, Tim has improved his driving and his times throughout the season. It hasn't been easy at times for Tim. 3 times during the season he's finished 16th place at the opening round at Zhuhai, the mental crazy race of Sakito, and the high curbs of Monza. Admittedly, at Monza, Tim was affected by penalties and a number of crashes over the Variante Alta chicanes. There were some high points during the season for Tim though, where he was able to qualify a season high 12th at Alton Park, and even ran on the fringes of the top 10 for a number of laps. There were some good battles for Tim throughout the campaign, as he battled with Envoy Extreme throughout the season when he raced, and there were a number of side-by-side moments at Fuji, Sudston National and Watkins Glen. There are some areas where Tim needs to improve, and the base of those would start with qualifying, as Tim sometimes is unable to qualify and immediately starts on the back foot thanks to the reduced qualifying time that he gets to practice. It can be quite difficult to review Tim's seasons in a number of different areas, as he hasn't been featured in battles that often this season. There's no doubt he's been battling hard with Shadowstalker DBS, NGR Royston, Envoy Extreme and a bunch of other fellas on multiple occasions. However, a number of these occasions have been missed through no one else's fault. The one aspect though that could be reviewed confidently and accurately, portrayed properly, is Tim's consistency. Again, the amount of times this season that Tim has been lapped has come down compared to the last few seasons. And if he can keep that up for season 14, he could potentially go through it without being lapped at all.
It's a good review, because, okay, obviously he starts off saying that his averages have dropped, but in all fairness, that's because there's been drivers coming in that have been up there. Obviously, Harry MLV immediately in and up there. So exactly. I mean, and that doesn't help. But having the rest of you pretty positive, saying he's improving every single season, even though the stats sometimes don't say it. He genuinely is getting there, and it won't be long before he's battling with the mid pack.
No, it'll take time for certain. It might take a few seasons yet, but he's got a good friend. It's a certain champion of this season who can help him and improve his driving style. And it harks back to what we said before when we were talking about the Group A1s. What you and Lee said is that he's got to find that link between casual racing and professional, as such racing, if you get what I mean. If he can do that, he will tag on to the midfield battle, there's no doubt about it. It's just a question of how long it'll take him, more than anything else.
Yeah, I mean, I think I kind of really wanted to see one of Tim's reviews in either the Group A1s or the modern touring cars, just to put out there and just inspire people to say, look, you will improve, you will get better, just try it, you know. And I think that's the big key, really, sometimes with sim racing, is not necessarily that there isn't people that want to race. It's sometimes just the case of they look at some of the stuff from the top boys and just think, I'm going to be nowhere. And I think Tim's review kind of puts the message out there, just saying, just try, just go for it. You will improve and you will have battles.
Just got to work on it.
Exactly.
It's got to be one of the biggest encouraging things to say and give an example of, because I do know that I'm fully aware of a lot of drivers shy away from league racing or don't want to league race because they don't feel they're quick enough or they're not quick enough, so they don't want to. And I'll be the biggest advocate of saying just get involved. It doesn't matter if you're chortling around with someone in last one position. If you're having a battle with someone, it don't matter where you are on the track. And the only way you're going to get quicker and better is to race with us and to race with anyone. Because you get dragged along by people naturally. You jump in a room socially, have some fun with them, see what lines they're taking, follow them, join a league, get involved. This next gen is not about only having the quick guys here. Yes, we've got a lot of quick guys here, but at the same time, any one of us is happy to give a helping hand, give some advice, give some pointers, get people involved. So Tim's a very, very good example of that, because he sticks at it week after week after week, and from when he first started, he's leaps and bounds better, and he's going to continue to improve and gradually make his way up the grid, I'm sure.
Moving on to another driver, we're going to have two more reviews, because what's the fun of having Lee here if we can't have his review?
Oh, really?
Well, to be fair, I did make Gianc read his own review for the Group A1s, which I kind of feel bad for, because it's kind of a bit painful for him, knowing he finished third when he should have been second, thanks to a disconnect.
Was it painful? I didn't notice, to be honest.
Did you not? Oh, okay. Well, I thought it might have been a little bit painful for you, but yeah, let's have Lee's review of the touring cars.
This is NGR-Gingers Season 13 season review. It's been a much welcome return to the front of the field for Lee. After the struggles of last season where he only finished in the top 5 3 times, this season has saw him battle for podiums and even race wins. A good start at Zhuhai saw Lee record his first podium of the season with third. It's quite a lonely race for him, but it was welcome tonic to wash away last season's woes. He found his form at Snetterton 300 and took a popular pole position. He battled hard with NGR Martin throughout the race and it looked as if he was on for a potential win when, surprisingly, a pair of very clean drivers ended up flying off the circuit, and Lee was left to lament the fact that a potential win only ended up as 4th place after spinning again on the final lap. Lee's performances in qualifying have shown his speed. He ended the season with the second best average qualifying behind NGR Scooby G. He showed again at Fuji that he had the pace for 3rd place in qualifying, but a couple of incidents of battles restricted him to 4th. A 2nd place at Silverstone National, where he had a great battle with long-time rivals myself, NGR Martin, NGR Fraser and Camonty Vudiz, was another highlight for him, and he quickly followed that up with a brace of 4th places at the next 2 rounds. He finished 5th at Quito after the harsh penalty to the circuit affected him as much as anyone else. A couple of tough races followed on from that. An incident at Watkins Glen saw Lee have his worst result as he finished 9th, before a difficult race at Monza saw him finish down in 8th. But the season ended on a high with a hard-charging battle with MLV 2741 at the Nürburgring short circuit, and they ended up having a fantastic battle to go on the podium again. A much improved season for Lee. However, in 8 races this season he qualified in the top 3, but in the race he finished off the podium. Lee's managed to find the speed he was missing, and now if he converts that to the race, he should be winning races in season 14.
Pretty accurate review there from all the stats and things. Thank you, Jack.
Yeah, and again, I'm kind of looking forward to seeing you in season 14, Lee.
Yeah, thank you.
Because again, obviously, you've bounced back from a bad season, and I think there's even more to come on top of what you've done this season, which makes it very exciting, because it means the top end of the league is just going to be immense next season.
Well, definitely that. You're looking at Jack, Scooby, Harry, Martin if he's here, me, Gareth, he's around, and that's just to name 6.
Fraser.
That are all Fraser. Sorry, 7. Yeah, there's more.
Adam.
I just remember that Adam. Yeah, 8.
Jamie.
Oh my God! So you put the 9 of us plus the rest of them that I haven't named, all on form with confident mood in mind, and that's going to make for the season. That's not discounting all the other guys that are improving and getting better in their skills in the mid pack that could well mix it up the front as well. So, yeah, I mean, it's once again, it's a very exciting prospect ahead, as we say at the beginning of every season, before it starts. I've got some discussions to have with you guys outside of this little chat we're having, because there might be some minor tweaks to the championships, but I think in fullness of what they already are, they'll be pretty similar.
Now, one more review before we head on to another topic, before we head to the a little Clio review, which won't be very long because obviously it's quite hard to review it. Scooby G, how could we... I don't see how we can't read his review out after what ended up being a very, very good season from him. 235 points in 12 races.
Agreed. It was an immense season.
This one's not necessarily because I'm interested in it, it's more just the amazing season he's had.
Believe
So
that's my cue.
it is, yeah.
This is our current champion NGR Scooby G's season 13 review. One word: dominance. That's how you would describe Scooby's season. He was challenged by Jack TM53 Synopsis a number of times, but that was the only consistent challenge that Scooby faced. His season started well, and had he have not got a time penalty on the final lap at Zhuhai, Jeff would have won the opening race of the season. His win at Snetterton 300 came by a last corner error by Jack, and Scooby nipped past in the post-rope penalties to win. It'd be a similar battle again between them at Fuji, where they were joined by NGR Martin for a phenomenal battle for the race win, and Scooby finished first on the road, but was classified second thanks to an earlier discrepancy. Then came his worst race of the season, finished fourth. Unbelievable how his worst result was fourth at Silverstone National, but he had driven well to fight back for the pack after being involved in a collision in the early stages of the race. Following on from that, he took advantage of the scraps behind him at Road America to take his second win of the season. But what followed next at Alton Park was almost mythic. Scooby took pole in the win, but it was the manner in which he did it. Every lap was perfect and no one could match his consistency. It will forever be regarded as arguably one of the best drives ever in TC history. From there on, Scooby accelerated from his closer rival, Jack, and didn't finish lower than third for the second half of the season. His speed has been phenomenal at times. He took pole position in 5 consecutive races from Alton Park to Brands Hatch to Indy, and took more fastest laps than anyone else as well. To say it's a deserved championship would be an understatement. What a season for Jeff. Unbelievable speed combined with great battle skills has made him dominant. In season 14 he'll be the overwhelming favourite to win the title, and judging by his speed this season, can anyone stop him?
That is the question. Can anyone stop him? And I've got a hypothesis here. I think the league name of the touring cars is going to stop him if previous history is to go on by.
Yeah, the TCC Champions curse.
Well, it's a lot of curse.
I think if there's someone that can break the curse, it's Jeff.
Well,
for certain.
again, it can be interesting to see, can he break the curse, or will someone else take the title?
No, I think he'll break the curse in respect of not have a pants season. However, there's massive potential that someone else could take the title from him while having a good season. So it's all going to be to play for, I think.
Now, obviously, end of season 13, obviously, discussions are being held for season 14. We'll get on to season 14 in another night, closer to the time of the start of it. Now, a topic I enjoy talking about, and I don't know whether you guys do or not, up to you. Obviously, both of these leagues commentated on, and I'm going to announce it now anyway, commentated on again next season.
Yay.
Rejoice.
How much has it helped, not necessarily in general, but actually between season 12 and season 13? I mean, I know obviously it helps massively in general, but obviously for myself, because I end up commentating, I quite like to know how it changes between the seasons as well, because obviously season 12 was a lot better because it was a full season of commentary compared to season 11, which was a half season. But the second full season of commentary, how did it differ for you two, and for the two leagues between season 12 and season 13?
Go on, Jack. You start.
I'm wondering whether he wants to go first on that one. Luckily I've got my answer queued up. To be honest with you, I think the way that things have changed, I mentioned it in the review, and considering that we are pressed for time, I'm going to remember my excerpts from it. Is that you've done a lot this season that's been similar but sort of more rounded. I think you haven't made as many mistakes, and not that you made many mistakes this season, but I've barely noticed any errors. You've delivered a very smooth commentary. It's been informative, taking us on board with the laps that you've done, and you haven't just stuck to the same driver. You've done a different driver each time and gone, let's go on board with such and such, and talk us through the corner names. And I know for statistic nerds like me, we know the track names, but it's nice for everyone to learn a little bit about the history of the track, because you've mentioned that in the past, of the some of the stat facts that you've got. And it's, as well as that, there've been quite exciting moments this season. Again, I mentioned it in the review, and you've just added a little bit of excitement to your own voice. I know a lot of people think, well, that's a bit weird, isn't it? It's not. You've got a very distinct, dulcet tone when you talk, and it's very calm and it's really nice. But when the action gets going this season, there's a little bit of spark, a little bit of excitement. It gets everyone a little bit, oh, go on then, let's get motivated, gets you right into the immersive world that is Arlene Grayson on a Monday night. I think it's been great. In a nutshell, it's been fantastic. I think you really do have a good ability of being able to commentate accurately, precisely, and immersively, all in one package.
I'll add to that in that the differences between seasons is your confidence has grown, Jordan, and thus you're flourishing in your role, which we can all tell that you love and enjoy doing. And all we can say is thanks very much. You know, keep at it, because you're improving all the time, as Jack said, with the camera, the commentary, all of it. And as a package for the Monday night tourers, it wouldn't be a package anymore without you there doing the commentary. So long may it continue.
Definitely.
Well, thank you for your kind words. Obviously, as you two know, I'm not one to say I'm good, so it does help. So we'll move on to what is the briefest of reviews of the three. I think you'll both agree. The Monday Night Tour Clios, and honestly different to the Max Coates ones on Saturdays. So Lee, you brought it in because you can't do the Saturday ones, and you really wanted to race the Clios again. Similar structure to the touring cars, same tracks, 5-minute qualifying, slightly shorter race. Let's kind of have a brief overview of the season, because it's quite hard to review the Clios.
Yeah, again, it's probably the championship that's created more reviews and incidents to look at. But then I think because the Clio is a trickier car to drive than the touring car, because it's less stable with its chilled out back tyres, and loose back end, so to speak. It's it's been more of a challenge, but they are such fun to drive because they're so competitively close when you get used to the car. And I think the field varies from the sharp end where the guys are nailed on, and then literally everybody then is just a very slightly different skill level, moving backwards minorly till you get to the guy at the back, and then but we're all warrant being there, and they're just such great fun. And like you say, I had to put them in. I couldn't race them anywhere else. So yeah, selfish thought process. I want to race in Clio, so I've put them in on the Mondays. It seems to be very popular again. I'd more full rooms. In fact, the majority of races were full, if not one short of full, every race this season gone. Previous season they were 12s and 13s, 10s and 11s. So it was a pleasing season in that sense. I certainly don't want to go through the thoroughness we did with the touring cars, but yeah, we can skim through. For me, and I'm going to start it unless you've got something else to say about first, Jordan.
I was just going to say, obviously, Jack won the series again in a Scooby G dominant-esque fashion.
Exactly where I was going to start. Yeah. As Scooby's taken the plaudits and deserves the praise for the Clios, it's exactly the same for Jack. We started off obviously running this. We were always going to run the same tracks as the touring cars. So Zenai first, and he just goes and sticks it on pole like a man possessed, and just rips around the circuit and takes the win. So I don't think there was any messing around from Jack from the first round. His head was down, and he was determined to start and continue on the season in one vein, and that was a winning one. Hence, he took a hat-trick of victories, and of which 2 of them were podiums in the first 3 races.
Yeah, obviously looking down, obviously Scooby G in second. I would like to say close to taking the triple, but in reality nowhere near, unfortunately.
No, it was a good second place that he held well from everyone else, but Jack was like Jeff in the Taurus, but it was Jack. Jack obviously in the Clios did the same thing, and well, he was off the podium once in the whole series, so that just says it all. Which I think was exactly the same as Jeff in the Taurus. He was off the podium once.
Actually, Jamie in third place, very very close to Scooby, and obviously not quite able to defend his title. Had a couple of bad races, but nothing major. Yourself fourth, Martin fifth. Obviously, you've had a pretty good season in the Clios, to be fair.
Yeah, I've really enjoyed it, to be honest. It was I think for me, just briefly, too many unfortunate little either events with somebody else or own mistakes. Probably more so own little mistakes, which is, as Jack sort of summed up in my review for the Taurus, that seems to have been my thing for the season for both cars. I've just not quite transformed my speed in qualifying and in the race to a consistent performance. So I really enjoyed it, but moving back to the other guys, going back to Jamie, who was in third. He's three second places following Jack on the first 3 races.
I'll say this much while he goes on to mute as he sorts stuff out. Those first 3 races that I won was so difficult. Snetterton wasn't, because there was a bit of a incident that dropped Jamie a little bit behind, and he had to fight his way back up through the field to get to second. But Jamie pushed me really hard in those first 3 races, and Martin, because Martin should have had 3 third places in a row. But something happened at Fuji. I think he had a collision with Edu, who was racing in that race at the time. And I think for me, for this season, because I know I stayed quiet while you guys were mentioning me at the front, I look at the races that I did where I could have done better, And I know that sounds bizarre, considering that I think I won the championship by what, 49 points, something like that. Something stupid anyway.
Yeah, that
I should
was,
have
yeah.
won. I should have won at Silverstone. I was in the lead. I crossed the line in first, but I had a 1 second time penalty because I ran wide at the second to last corner. That was frustrating. I thought that was a really harsh penalty. One that could have been avoided. MLV overtook me on the final lap at Road America on the final corner, which is just to really rub it in, because I defended badly into the final corner. I don't know why I was so defensive, and he just breezed past me before we even got the chance to slipstream one another. And then the big one at Sakito, where I was involved in a massive shunt at the start, and I felt very, very aggrieved at the time, and that made me finish 10th. And that I really, I could have been the first driver in next gen history to go on the podium in every single race, the same with Scooby. But that race was really frustrating, and I missed that chance out. But I put a lot of the success for this season, not just in the Clios, but in the touring cars as well, down to the Astra from season 12. We spoke about this earlier on in the season, Jordan. The Astra has done a lot for me. I only had 2 podiums in the Clios last season throughout the entirety of it. I didn't get any podiums in the TC League because I was in the Astra. It wasn't quite quick enough to get the target that I wanted on the podium. But it helped me improve as a driver. It really did. I was able to maximise a lot of the car all of the time in that Astra, and I wasn't getting the results. I was really frustrated. But the car helped my driving skills better in a front wheel drive car, and I jumped into the Clios this season expecting nothing, and I think that probably helped, not thinking about anything and just going, sod it, I'll just put my foot down and see what happens. And I got 6 wins. I had an amazing battles throughout the season. I can't complain.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, well, Lee sorts himself out for the minute, so going further down, I mean, D Whitehouse 7, a good season for him.
Sorry, I'm back. Sorry about that.
There we
Your
go.
wife, she's coming in and trying to talk to me while I'm doing this important live interview. It's very rude. Anyway, I was listening throughout all of it, and yes, I just going back to what Jack was saying about driving the Astra. I think more so, Jack, that there was not the car, but the fact that the car was slow, so you had to maximise its momentum by driving it with keeping the momentum going, which is the absolute essential thing when driving the Clio. So because you'd mastered driving the Astra as fast as you could, i.e. a slower car than everyone else, so you're trying to keep up with them, you then jump in the Clio and you drive it with momentum, and bang, you've gone. You've hit the ground running because you've been doing it the season before. So yes, it's because of the Astra, but I think it's because of the Astra's pace, not because of the Astra itself, if you know what I mean.
I didn't know whether you want to continue talking about Jamie or not at all, Lee, if you can remember what you were going to say.
Well, I think I really felt for him this season, not just in the Clios. Like Martin a little bit, he's got caught up in incidences that are just unlucky, unfortunate, or weren't his fault, and it's nailed him. And we all have a run of this, whether it's poor form, poor luck, wrong place, wrong time. It doesn't get us all, and sadly, somewhere along the line. And I think it's sort of got him double trouble right across the board this season. He's been very frustrated by it all. A couple of times I've had to put my arm around him and give him a bit of a support and say, come on, it'll end in a minute, stick with it, blah blah blah, and he has done. So I've really felt for him, but he still battled through. He still stuck with it. He took a second place in the final round, which I think he was out for a battling round and wanted a good time, and he did, and he had a good, and he went at it. He didn't score at Silverstone at all. I can't remember what it was now. Whether he
Got bumped off a couple of times and he retired.
Yeah, properly frustrated in that one. And I think if he'd scored some points there, then I think he would have been pretty close to probably taking second, carrying a bit more momentum through, albeit it would have been a backward jump. But if it's a maybes. So I feel for Jamie, and I look forward to seeing him back with some more confidence, and straight back up the front end again. Better luck, and he'll be right there.
Just a couple more drivers. I think obviously D Whitehouse 7, a good season by him, 7th place. In his first 4 seasons, really, in the Clios.
Yeah, he's one of those drivers that I'd put in one of the most improved bracket. He's coming along leaps and bounds. His racecraft is improving, his skills are improving, his speed has been improving massively, and he's shown that when he's qualified right at the field in some races towards the end of the Cedars, and then held position until a little incident or something, a little mistake or whatever it happens to have been, has just put a knock on him maintaining that front sort of run, which is a shame. But I think he'll continue to improve and be getting ahead of that mid-pack very shortly if he continues the way he has done towards the end of the season. Definitely.
Now, one final driver, because I get to sit here and talk to you guys about your races and that, but obviously this is the championship I race in as well. So I find it only fair that I sit here and criticise you guys. Not really. That you kind of get to criticise my season, because obviously I hate to say it, but my season has been had a very bad start for obviously personal reasons, and different reasons beyond that. It was quite a difficult start, ending up missing 2 of the rounds, and again most of the season ending up on the controller, which is fine, it's part of life. But I look at the table and think 10th should have done better, type of thing, and I'll let you guys tell me about it, because I kind of like to hear it from other people and their thoughts, if you know what I mean.
I think to be honest with you, if you look at your season, Jordan, you missed, like you said, you missed 2 races. I mean, you disconnected at Sakito and you missed, which race was it? It was Fuji, I believe. And if you take your average points score, and if you were to plot them in to the graphs, you'd be ahead of David Whitehouse. He finished 7th in the championship. That's the fine margins you're working with between 7th and 10th. I think, honestly, this season, when you've raced on the wheel, we haven't really seen the best of you, because you went barrel rolling, I think it was at Silverstone, and then you had another
Snetterton.
Snetterton, when you tried to do it there, and something happened as well outside of the race, and you were told to stop, put it that way. And I think you showed some really good pace on the control. I mean, when you were started 3rd twice in the last 2 rounds of the season, Monza, a lot of people were like, he's got 3rd because of the slipstream, and he's only there because of the slipstream, etc. But I think everyone took notice at Nürburgring short, where it's not really a slipstream track. Lee was following you around for the most part during qualifier, and he kept ahead of him and effectively acted as a buffer for Lee almost in that regard, and you qualified ahead of him. And I think that show of pace on the controller is really impressive. I'd love to see you on a wheel, and hopefully with the way the timings work next season, you get the chance to do that.
Yeah, I'll back you up a little bit on that, Jack. And to be fair, we have been pretty quiet about you, Jordan, and not mentioned anything. But you also come into the bracket of a big improver. And to say that I was following Jordan around at what is it, the Nürburgring and a couple of other tracks as well. I was having to chase his ass off, to be honest with you. and that I've not had to do that before. So that to me is a big improvement. That all of a sudden you're there, whether you're on your stick or the couple of times that you've been on your wheel, and you're holding your own at certain times, and you go into the phases of becoming more skilled and becoming quicker. And sadly, as a race, what I've experienced through my sim racing career anyway so far is the consistency is the hardest thing to master and get right, and it comes and goes. You can never keep a longevity period, a long period. I'm not trying to get technical words. I don't know. You can't keep a long period where you're massively consistent. Like you can't do 10 seasons in a row unless you're Jeff, where you've won 1 million titles. Anyway, I don't want to big him up again. And so you're going to that phase now, and I can see in you what I've seen in others' phases that they've gone through, and even like my own phases. If you can try and get on the wheel more permanently, I think that will help you. However, you've shown really good improvement and skills on the sticks, and to know all about that, Jack's the master, because that's where he started, and he was very good to start with, and then he's moved to the wheel, so he knows all about that. So I think you're moving in the right direction, and to be balancing it with what you do with your commentating, which is a big commitment, let's be honest. I'm sure it doesn't give you a huge amount of time to be practicing massive amounts, in which case that makes it even more impressive that you're getting quicker and you're starting to mix it up more often up the front.
Yeah, I don't practice at all. I mean, the first bit of practice I get is qualifying most of the time.
Yeah, in that case, that's even more impressive, because, I mean, if that's what I was doing the 2 seasons before this one, and because I was doing the 3 races in the practice, well, it's like anything. Any professional sportsman is not good at something unless they're doing it all the time. And it's the same with whatever it happens to be, whether it's hitting a ball or driving a car, kicking a ball, whatever it is. So the fact that you're doing that without practice as well, that makes it even more special. So,
I mean, I think a lot of the season, for me personally, I felt quick, but I felt a lot of it was robbed, thanks to P cars, as it does. With the penalty system, obviously, and as Lee will tell you, a lot of videos were sent.
yeah, and I could see where you were coming from. You sent a fair few in where you were questioning the game, and I understand why you're questioning the game. Unfortunately, the types of incidents that the game was doing to you, which at the same time weren't right, you were still doing what anyone else was sort of doing. So it was difficult for us to actually make a difference for the types of questions you were asking for what happened. But yes, I completely agree with you. The game ruined a fair few opportunities for you with what it did, as it does with everybody else, unfortunately.
That's definitely for certain.
And I tell you, the one that will always stay in my mind was Nürburgring.
Yeah.
That was, yeah. But that season 13, it's. I mean, I obviously Jack knows this. I mean, I was speaking to Jack afterwards and just going, I'm driving my ass off here, getting penalised for the game. Don't I do it for season 14? And I am going to do it for season 14. I'm gonna have another crack and see if I can get a top 4 finish out of it next season, or a win. You never know. But yeah, I think the Clios, although they're hard to drive, is quite a good starting car, because you really do learn your racecraft in these cars. You have to learn how you get past people, where to do it, and how to gain the speed out of the car.
Yeah. It's a very good car to learn your craft, albeit edgy, and it's about momentum, and that's what early racing types are. All the Formula 1 drivers, they start in karting. Karting's about momentum, the smaller touring cars. This lower engined lower powered cars. It's all about momentum, carrying speed to the corners, getting the right lines, and then racecraft with it. The Ginettas, another great base point that Jamie runs, the GT5s, the juniors. Yeah, you've hit the nail on the head for sure. It's a very good place to start learning your trade and your crafts in racing.
And it's one I think we will look forward to in season 14, I think. See if Jack
Definitely.
can be the first person to defend the Clio title.
Yeah, maybe. To be honest with you, I'm more of expecting nothing next season. I'm not expecting anything in any of the three championships. So it would be a case of just take it as it comes. If this only ends up being my one championship, I'll be made up. If it ends up being more success, I'll be well made up.
It's no mean feat to defend a title with the likes of the races that we have currently racing at NXTGEN at the moment.
Exactly.
But anyway, gentlemen, apologies, it's quite late. It's gone a bit more than we would have liked. As per normal, we plan these things and they never quite go to plan. Thank you for joining me tonight. It's been a pleasure talking and reviewing season 13. Obviously, in the near future, nearer the start of April, when season 14 does get underway, I think it's the 8th of April, if I'm correct. 8th of April, season 14 begins. We'll obviously have a preview and see if anything's changed in the leagues, which obviously there is plans, potentially in progress. But yeah, thank you for your time, gentlemen. It's much appreciated.
Good pleasure.
No problem. Thanks to you for sorting that one out.
And yeah, I mean, do get involved with the league. Obviously, in my opinion, you can learn a lot of stuff, and it's very good fun, even on a controller. Trust me, it is very good fun. So yeah, do get yourself signed up once the sign-up posts are out, because I'm sure, especially for these leagues, the spots will go quickly. So you definitely want to be one of the first people in to guarantee your spots. But until our season 14 preview, where we'll hopefully have some drivers' names announced. Obviously, Jack and Lee will be confirmed for their respective leagues. Obviously, Jack in all three aspects, Lee in the touring cars and the Clios. Obviously, I've already told you I'm doing the Clios, which is good. Do join us for the preview, but thank you if you are still watching tonight. Sorry if we've kind of talked you into sleeping. Jack probably has done that.
Yep.
Join us for the preview, but thank you all for listening and watching tonight. Have a good evening.